Good evening. I'd like to call the King George County Board of Supervisors to order for the Monday, January 8th, 2024 work session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance at a moment of invocation by myself. And pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty. Ms. Bender.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I call to order the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors at this time.
Thank you. Item number 001, Economic Local Performance Agreement. Stewart?
You ready for me?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, we notified Mr. Payne, the attorney for Amazon, that the board had
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've made a mistake. I've jumped through the public comment or any changes to the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? See no changes. Public comment. Comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please provide your full name and your district when submitting your public comment so that it can be properly recorded and included in the public record. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none here, Mr. Dines, do we have any online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anything read into the record?
Yes, I do have one, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
All right. Mr. Chairman, honorable board members, my name is Anthony Statz and I reside at 9007 Clare Street. At the previous meeting, the board approved a resolution to move the meeting to 4 p.m. While I agree that in the past the meetings have dragged on for too long, this has made King George common citizens less involved in the proceedings. The start time of the meeting was not, in my opinion, the problem. I believe it is wise for the board to keep in mind that the Dahlgren military base employs the bulk of King George citizens and that the military base operates with 3 primary shifts. There's 3 to 7, 9 to 5, and 6 to 2. The board must now acknowledge that without transparency and accessibility, one cannot hold the government to the greatest standards. I'm hoping the board will see that it miscalculated in shifting the meetings to 4. It will now return them to 6, and that setting current meeting length restrictions is the best way to make the sessions more accessible, rather than starting the meeting early. I believe the bylaws provide the chairman and the county administration a great deal of discretion in determining meeting agendas and timings. Setting a time limit on meetings is very sensible in my opinion. How long can a meeting last? Meetings, in my opinion, should be digestible in addition to accessible. In the past, some meetings lasted up to 5 or 6 hours. It is unacceptable to have a 5 or 6 hour long meeting. The residents of King George who work the 8-hour shift must be allowed to attend the meetings without the board intervening. Thank you for your time, and I will send that to you, Ms. Fish.
Thank you. Item now 0101. Go, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we notified Mr. Payne, the attorney for Amazon, that the board had reconsidered its December motion on its first meeting in January. Just heard back from Mr. Payne today that effectively they just disagree and they think they have an agreement. So we will continue on in discussions with them as necessary and keep the board informed, but that's where we stand today.
Yes, sir. Is there any questions for Mr. Stewart? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
That was not an unexpected position, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would have expected them to do.
Review and discussion of Board of Supervisors, bylaws, standard of conduct, code of ethics, and procedure.
So, Mr. Chairman, I suggested that perhaps we start with the documents that were adopted in January of 2023, the ones that you worked off of for your first meeting. And I think that Ms. Fish has given everybody a copy of those. From my perspective, I've identified one or two little things that we need to change, and that is just has to do with a legality or syntax or something. But what I need really is for you all to tell me the things that you don't like that you want to change. Generally speaking, this document's in pretty good shape, I would say. It is very much in detail, whereas you could probably do with one that's a little shorter and a little less broad. It certainly doesn't hurt to have all of the details spelled out as long as you can remember, would be the only thing. So however you all would like to go forward, we can do it. I did on page 7, I noticed where there's a mandate that the county administrator be the clerk. So hopefully the board will give me some direction to change that since you have a different person as the clerk. And then there's some other just minor things that really make it read right.
Okay, I sent out, Mr. Strauss sent some things in that he was interested in changing. I sent them to all the board. Is there any discussion?
The only thing, it's on. There it is. The only thing is, I just want our bylaws to help us be as transparent as we possibly can legally, and help us run efficiently, and so if we do things like, put a time limit on the meetings, we have to understand that if you've been sitting in a room for 5 hours, you're not thinking well anymore, right? You're not in a place to make good decisions. And I think sometimes the meetings start going to 12, then you're just rushing to get to decisions. You're trying to get out the door. It's just not a good scene. So I think we need to put time limits. I think that's one of the main things for me.
There was some interest in
This conference will now be recorded.
Stop.
Okay.
There was some interest in revisiting the time, beginning start time.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I had previously submitted the proposed changes to the bylaws, and I had recommended times in there, but I would like to change that to the recommended start time to 17:30, 5:30 p.m.
5:30, that's what we used to do, the service authority. So as long as we combine the meetings, I have no problem with that.
And the service authority goes first.
Yes, usually it did. Or we could figure out a different way to set up the agenda so that the service authority can be rolled into the regular board of supervisor meeting, and I'll take any suggestions.
And another thing I was going to say on the time limit, and I talked to the offices on Friday about asking you guys to be more efficient, right, and be more effective. And it's not helping you be more efficient if we're going to be here till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then people have to call out the next day, right? So then there's people from King George coming to get certain services done they can't get done because we've been in meetings all night long. So that's another reason for like the time limits to be on there. And I can't ask you guys to be more efficient and more effective with your time if I'm going to hurt your time and ruin your time. So.
Mr. Sellers?
Mr. Chair, one of the changes that I would like to suggest is we have a second round of public comments at the end of the meeting or before a closed session. This allows folks who have attended the meeting tonight to address what they've heard. I would request that we limit that second round to only addressing the items that we've talked about that evening, not going back and rehashing what they've already hit with public comments at the beginning of the meeting, not talking about something we're not even going to be dealing with for 3 to 6 months, but addressing what we've talked about at that meeting that night rather than having to wait 2 weeks to address it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
so in the amendments that I submitted, that would be option 2, which is based off a recommendation that you had made or an idea that you provided, which I thought was a good idea. So what I recommend is that we adopt option 2, which allows 2 public comment periods. One early on in our meeting, which is people sign up on the list that's outside as they come in. First 10 that sign up, they talk in the first comment period, and anybody else that wants to talk talks in the second public comment period.
So you want to scratch out the part about the roads? Okay, thank you. And,
The
is
schedule
there any
part.
discussion on that?
Yes,
You want to scratch out the schedule part, is that what you're saying? Option 1.
Mr. Chair, my concern with that is the sign up. I don't disagree with the sign up, but in my time on the board, I've noticed that sometimes it takes a lot of courage to get up there and give a public comment. So I want to at least make it an option if someone is inspired to then get up out of their seat and want to give public comment. I don't want to take away their First Amendment right to give a public comment just because they didn't sign their name on a sheet.
I think that the way I understand it, that would be in the second public comment section.
I understand that, but sometimes people have small children or they're elderly and are uncomfortable with waiting until the end of the meeting because they need to get home. So I don't want to take away the citizens' right to get up to the podium and choose which time they want to give public comment.
Mr. Chair, we're not taking away anybody's right. We're providing them the option. And I propose that we adopt the amendments as submitted for the 2 periods.
Mr. Sullivan?
Ms. Bender, can you elaborate on your objection? I'm not sure I'm tracking.
It was mentioned that the first public comment period, they have to actually sign a piece of paper outside, which is what we've done in the past. But my concern is sometimes folks that are sitting in the audience, it takes a lot of courage and they're inspired to get up and speak. And by saying that they can't give public comment in the first public comment period because they didn't sign a piece of paper does concern me, because sometimes we have elderly folks or people that have small children, so they can't wait until the end of the meeting to give public comment. And that's where my concern comes in.
Davis?
I know exactly where you're coming from on that, but they also do have the option to do like, Anthony did today, and they can write something in if they don't have the courage to do so and have someone read it for them. It takes less courage to write me an email and say, can you submit this for me, and read it too. That's one way to look at it.
I understand all that, but, I don't want to take away the barriers for people to give public comment. And everybody comes to their public comment differently. Some people are not comfortable with the computer. Some people just want to get up, have inspiration. I just don't want to take barriers away. We said we want to be transparent, and I want to give people an opportunity to have their say and not put any barriers in their way.
So, I think it's actually, in my opinion, taking down barriers. So it allows people to comment on the issues that we have spoken about later on. As far as the efficiency of the meeting, the reason why I believe Mr. Stroud wanted that was the efficiency of the meeting, so it wouldn't go on for 3 hours, public comment, and then get to the business and then get public comment again. So what is the will of the board?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't hear you.
What is the will of the board? Will of the board.
Well, if I can add to that before you say that, what this option does is it actually supports what Ms. Bender is asking, because it allows the people that are elderly and with children, they can actually sign the list, and they can be first and get out of there, and they're not sitting here with children waiting until an opportunity to talk. So it actually provides that. And I think if anybody had any issues, or everybody would, and I'd certainly allow somebody elderly with kids to go first.
Mr. Davis?
I think also as someone who, just like we have people here today, I've sat in the seats, and they talk about, the board talks about things that night, and you can't comment to them. I mean, you almost want to raise your hand and ask a question. And given that, condensing it to 10 and allowing us to do a second one that's not limited, allows people to directly comment on what we spoke about that night, as opposed to what appeared was, in some of the old board meetings, was the board was showing up and decisions were already made. So by the time people came in and got to make a comment on something, the board already knew what direction they were going. They'd already made their mind up. They're already going to vote. As opposed now, we're creating a second opportunity to speak directly to what we talked about that night And now we have until the next meeting to think about what the citizens have said and those things and take those into account. So it's also creating that. But I do hear what you're saying on that as well.
Ms. Bender?
And I'm not objecting to the second public comment because I've said that for a long time because people would like to comment on what's happened. My only concern with the time limit on the meeting is when there is a public hearing item that is controversial or has a lot of public comment, I don't want to cut them off saying it's 10 o'clock and that's it. So I want us to be careful. I understand wanting to make the meeting shorter, but sometimes you have to let the meeting go because everybody needs to be heard. Hopefully we don't have a Prince William where it lasts over 24 hours, but I'm just saying for some topics, sometimes citizens just want to they feel better by getting up and giving their public comment, and we shouldn't cut that off.
So as far as the end time on the meeting, the board has the power to, with a quorum, they have a power to they can dismiss that rule at 10 o'clock.
Suspend.
But it would have to be a motion before 10 o'clock to do that. So if there's a item that is very controversial, I'm sure that it would be after 10 o'clock. So does everybody agree on that particular part? 10 o'clock, and if there's any problem after, right before 10, the board votes to determine whether it can carry on the meeting after 10? Is there a consensus on that?
Mr. Chair, if you're asking if we concur with what's in the amendment, yes, that is correct. That we end at 2200 unless we have a motion to extend and a vote of at least 4 supervisors. And then the other option is we can always take a recess and then pick up the next day or whatever.
Well, so I'm against the next day thing, but as far as the supermajority of 4, I think all you would need is a majority of 3, not a supermajority.
We can go with 3. The previous bylaws had 4.
Okay. So we have a consensus on that? Doug? Davis?
I just want to clarify which part, Mr. Strauser, it's not the whole thing, correct? We're just consensus on which
We're just
part.
talking about the 10 o'clock thing.
That's fine.
Okay. And let's get back to the other issue about your other issue, Mr. Stroud.
So,
Public comment.
yeah, public comment. Can we come to a consensus that we agree that a second round is appropriate?
Does everybody agree with the second round? Ms. Bender?
It's just where do we put it? Do we put it just before the adjournment? Where do we want to put it?
Yes. That's a yes. Okay. Now let's talk about the first public comment. Let's knock that out. Is there any comments on that? Do we want to do it for 30 minutes with sign up, or 30 minutes, or unending? What's the consensus of the board? I need some guidance here. What's your will, members?
Unlimited.
Mr. Davis? Mr. Davis? Okay, can I pass you? Can I pass you? Mr. Stroud?
30 minutes for the sign up.
Mr. Sullins?
Hesitate to call it unlimited, but I guess that's the best way of saying is unlimited.
Mr. Davis?
I'll go with unlimited. And the only reason why I say it is because it's not very often that I've been to a lot of meetings over the past year that we get that many people over 10. It may be something that we can revisit on heated topics of some sort. I don't know, but knowing that we have a time limit, if you have 30 people signing up to speak over the data center, I mean, we're not going to get much accomplished that night, is what I'm trying to say as well. We have to take that into consideration. We have to think about that, but I would go with unlimited for now.
Okay, so my vote would be 30 minutes of sign up. So that fails and it's 30 minutes of unlimited. That's what you all voted for, right? 30 minutes of unlimited, 30 minutes of unlimited, and 30, I'm sorry, unlimited, unlimited, unlimited.
Yes.
So that's
I was
correct.
going to say
right?
30 minutes unlimited don't work together.
Yeah, I know. You're right. And so that would fail. So in regards to Mr. Stroud, I don't see it in here now with the agenda. Was that removed? With the chairman setting the agenda? Chairman, there was you sent an amendment.
I did. Everything in here is actually a change to the existing bylaws. So there are edits to them. So the next one would be the closed meetings, which has the edits, which is also one of your recommendations to be able to include that meeting minutes are taken in closed meeting.
So you have on the table that you want minutes in the closed meetings,
I thought you had a good idea with that.
sir? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any discussion on that matter?
I would also like to have minutes taken at the in a closed session, but are there any unforeseen things that we need to consider? Is it foiable? Is it
Not foiable. It only can be released by a circuit court judge.
okay?
Is
What
that
about
correct, Mr. Stewart?
what about storage?
So it would be the clerk's responsibility that takes minutes to store that in a confidential
Okay.
area.
Yeah, as long as we've addressed those items, I very much think we should have minutes.
Would determine what's confidential and what's not.
Mr. Davis? Ms. Bender?
The concern is how detailed the closed meeting minutes. I mean, and if I correct, Mr. Stewart, you do not have to have it a transcript. It can be just a blow-by-blow account of what went on in the meeting. So that I would like that addressed. And then also I have a question. Are we going to go down Mr. Stroud's list and then go through each section? How are we going to do going through? Because I marked up the whole document.
Well, I figured we'd go through Ms. Stroud's and then we could go on any other additional discussion.
Okay, thank you.
So in the closed meeting, I think that Mr. Stroud, I believe that everybody would be interested in minutes for the closed session, the way it sounds to me. Is that correct, ladies and gentlemen?
Just as long as we discuss how it's structured, how do you want it structured? But minutes are fine.
Mr. Stroud? Mr. Sullivan? Okay. And then so in the bylaws, it talks about items being removed from the closed session. So I propose to the members that any item that we deem as members to take out of the closed meeting, that we will have the responsibility of keeping that confidential. So when we get a packet in there that has 30 papers and I want to take it out, then I get the responsibility of keeping that confidential. The board doesn't. The individual person who takes that document. Do you all agree or disagree?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I
sir.
do agree. We could have name stamps so that we could stamp them as well as the government requires that with documents. But I think it's also that important that the public understands the reasons for that and why it's important that we're able to do that. And it's because if you're in a closed session and you get a 30-page document and you haven't seen it before, now all of a sudden you have to review it and you're the public and you're sitting out here waiting for us to get out of a closed session, you're gonna be waiting a long time. I'm a slow reader. So it's important that we're able to take that, review it, and we're able to do the best job we can supporting you, the public.
Does everybody agree with that, Ms. Bender?
I wanted to echo Mr. Stroud there because, especially with the Amazon agreement, it was very hard to absorb that and study it in 5 minutes in the back, and then we had to go into a room and get permission to look at it and further, and that really bothered me. But one thing I want to ask about, and this is something I wanted to bring up this year, was those closed set with those documents. There is a point that those documents could be public. So I just wanted some clarification if the documents like the Amazon Performance Agreement then became public, something to that example. So I was looking for Mr. Stewart on that one.
So if, Ms. Bender, if the board has the will to make a document public, we'll review it with Mr. Stewart, and then we'll vote on whether that document can be published. You agree with that, Mr. Stewart?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. It's up to the will of the board.
Okay. Next thing is the agenda. I would like to keep the old bylaw where the chair and the county administrator will prepare the agenda for each meeting, and scratch out the rest of that from Mr. Stroud's suggestion.
Which one is that again?
B, 5, 6, 7, order of business agenda B, 5B. The chair and the county administrator shall prepare an agenda for each meeting using the draft agenda that has been agreed upon by the majority of the Board of Supervisors, no later than 5 days prior to the intended meeting. For the purpose of this document, majority excludes the chair. It is used to account for supervisors which may be unavailable during the time the draft is routed. The listing of which supervisors approve the draft will be retained for reference.
I think part of why, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Strider put that in there is because, once again, I'm talking to the people here about being more efficient, being more effective in their office. And I know that we could easily come into a meeting and scratch some from an agenda, but I might have, Mr. Minor sitting here for an hour. He worked on something all week long to bring into this meeting, and then we've wasted company resources. We've wasted his time doing something just to have it scratched off the agenda in the meeting. And now he gets up an hour after being here and walks out the door. So I want to be conscientious of us not packing the agenda with so much stuff and make it as small as possible so we can be more effective at doing what we're supposed to be doing. I think that's part of what his reasoning behind what he's talking about, if I'm not mistaken.
So if you have 4 people sitting in a meeting and excluding the chair, it would be chaos, because number one, you wouldn't be able to agree upon setting an agenda, and then it has to be, get all the information, put it in the thing, and have it out in a reasonable time. The Robert's Rules of Order talk about this, and I don't see why that would need to change. Ms. Bender?
I would agree with you, Mr. Collins. I would also say that one of the things I've thought about is that so that the agenda is not packed, we make a conscientious effort not to pack the agenda. The agendas, the last 3 meetings of last year were way too packed, too much stuff on it. We should cut that down. And one thing we should do is that if department heads want something on the agenda and it's on the agenda and their information is not given to the clerk of the court by Friday, then it gets removed from the agenda, because we should not have stuff being dropped on, and that would also cut down on some length of the meetings, I think. But I think, especially for Robert's Rules of Order, it should be the chair who sets the agenda. With the supervisors can at any time ask before the agenda meeting to have something included, and I think there should be a good faith that we keep it on there as long as we can get the information by Friday.
Mr. Sullins? What's your opinion on this matter?
What are you asking?
To keep the,
No, I understand that, but are you asking me if I'm in favor of it?
are you in favor of what I just read or not?
As it's written, no. I prefer to have you set the agenda, but I would like to have a time where we can review that, and among the 5 of us determine, is it too packed or not? Or is there a means where we can pull some stuff off efficiently on the Friday before to keep it from being a packed agenda, overly packed agenda?
Well, my goal is to set the agenda So this agenda has been set in too late, in my opinion, but right now we're in a, January 2nd, y'all came in, and so we have these things that need to be taken care of. But I would imagine that wouldn't be the same type of agendas in the future. We will have more work sessions, especially for the budget. I can send out a draft agenda. That's not a problem. And then if there's questions or comments, we can deal with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that plan.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So, let's talk about why that's there. And one thing, I'd like to know the reference in Robert's Rules of Order that you're referencing. If you could look that up and let me know. I think somebody ripped that page out of my book. So on the 2nd, we had a meeting. We agreed in that public meeting that we were going to have a meeting tonight to talk about the bylaws. Afterwards, I found out after coming to the county that the agenda had been changed, and a number of the officers that the county personnel were tasked with preparing briefs for tonight. So I take a lot of pride in being able to lead and manage people and manage time, trying to be efficient and effective. Whenever and I don't know what was on the people's agenda. I don't know what the people, what they were working on, but whenever we're giving them a task that they're going to be briefing the supervisors, and this was on the 2nd, tonight the 2nd, so they came in, I don't know what time they came in on the 3rd, depending if they were here until, I like they were here the night before, but they come in at whatever time they received the task, if it was that day or the next day, they're going to prepare a brief. They had at the max, for the most 3 days to prepare before they came in and brief us, not including the weekends. And they had to do that with whatever else they had that they were supposed to be working on. And if they're reviewing engineering plans and trying to get to a company that needs an approval so they can continue building, there's a matter of them. They're now managing priorities. And whenever they get hit with this on a short notice, then they have to adjust their priorities or work at night or work on the weekends to do that. And they're doing it without us even knowing it's a requirement. So
Mr. Stroud, can I go? You're not finished?
No, sir, I am not.
Go ahead.
So we have the ability as supervisors to come in here, and what we do is we have the ability we approve the agenda. And as Mr. Davis stated, if we come in here, we don't get a chance to look at it first. And all it's asking is that we see a draft agenda. You can email it out, have it emailed out, or, we could talk about it before we leave the meeting, as we did on the 2nd for this meeting. And then if we come in here, though, and we look at the agenda and you ask us to approve it, and we don't approve something, now we've got somebody that's prepared a brief, that came in to brief us, that spent time to do it, maybe after hours or weekends, to come in here, and then we tell them, no, you have to come back next time. We have the ability to do that, correct? We have the ability to approve the agenda. And we could say that we don't want to see something after it's already on. Is that not correct, sir?
Follow you.
So, Mr. Stroud, can I address some of that?
Yes, sir, you can.
So, like this evening, there's members that, employees that are bringing things forth. They were set by the agenda by me. They were set by the agenda by me, by you. So I have a list of things that you all wanted to do from the orientation and January 2nd. And then on January 2nd, I repeated this list. And then I set the agenda with these things on the list. The court horse report, the preschool, this stuff is not for, this is for discussion or information, especially for the new members, because you don't have a discussion and then go and you make an action. That's what that's what I understand that you're against. I'm against it too. So you have discussion. So these things are not things that happen overnight, the budget. Ms. Hahn is here to present not the budget, but what days and what's the next steps for your information, for all our information, so we can, and we'll talk about it when the time comes. If that timeline is what we want. So these things aren't, they're already, a lot of things already done, Mr. Bryce. You know, some of these reports are already complete. He's just presenting them to us in a public fashion so the public can see them, so we can see them. All the information that we get, the public gets to see at the same time. So it's not that the chairman is setting things on the agenda for his or her free will. It is, I'm working off as the chairman as the will of the board. So these things that are here tonight are the will of the board. There's not a thing on here that I wanted on here. This is for you all. This is the things you all wanted on here. So it seems ludicrous that you would have 4 people setting an agenda, and then you would have a chair that wouldn't even be able to put in an opinion on that. So I think that the current, it is in the Robert's rules. I don't carry Robert's rules with me, but this is the way it's worked for many years with the revisions to Robert's rules, and I don't think it's a good way to conduct business by having 4 people set the agenda. You already are setting the agenda because you're telling me what you want.
Mr. Chairman, just very quickly, the only thing I would caution the board about, and I wasn't listening as well as I should have, Mr. Stroud, if you're trying to have 4 people set an agenda, you've almost got to have a public meeting to set the agenda, because you're not allowed to have these meetings outside of the public, and I think that was something that was important to all of you all. So that is the reason you typically have the chair set the agenda based upon the requests of the members to do that. And then with Mr. Sully's suggestion that you send it out for the members to suggest changes or whatever, that may be a good compromise.
Mr. Chair, I also want to add that, especially on the Service Authority side, there were things that I added because of emerging issues, and Ms. Hahn is also going to present some background information about one of those issues that has to be addressed. So there are times that there are things that arise that need to be taken care of. And also right now, without a county administrator who usually sometimes goes to agenda meeting and tells you things that are on the radar that needs to come up, or the county attorney can tell you things that are emerging. They're not given by us or by the board. They're given by our staff that say, we need to address this issue at the moment. So there's a lot that goes into agenda making. And so my concern is having everybody have to weigh in. That might muddy the process and cause delay to address issues and do the county and public's business.
Davis, do you have anything more?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Some of this, I want you to put yourself in our shoes a little bit, because I do sympathize, Mr. Stroud, and I sympathize with what you're saying, because I want to be efficient with the process, and this could help. It could muddy the waters. But I watched you last year up here going, why is that on the agenda? Who put that on the agenda? With the past chair. Like, there were struggles with, why is that going on here? And the next thing you know, you're mad. You guys are going to some kind of closed session or something. And we're trying to avoid surprises. We're also, ourselves trying to avoid being, in a sense, put on a shelf, and also trying to ensure that if these bylaws stick for a little bit, that board members down the line, are protected from that same scenario kind of happening. It's not a trust issue with you, but it's like a trust but verify. The compromise we need to make, it appears to me, because my concern was voting outside of here would not be right if we're voting on something, but that it is sent to us, and that we have the ability to just email you, and I guess you have the ability to take it or not, and just say, can we remove that from the agenda? It just, just trust the fact the agenda's not going to be overpacked and overstacked with stuff to where it's just too much information. That makes sense.
Well, I agree with you, overstacked, and that was a problem from last time. And yes, my arguments last time, during the last two reigns, 2 years, wasn't so much that it was on the agenda, it was on the agenda immediately for action. So this is the first time we heard it, first time I heard it, and then we were going right to action. That was my big problem, so that's why I suggested to the board now that everything goes to discussion, and then the next meeting, as Robert's rules say, you can action, or you can have this, you can pass it on and table it for discussion, as long as you want to an action, so you're all ready for an action. So, it's an efficient manner. My goal is never, I've been on that shelf. So I understand what it's like to be on that shelf. And I'm trying to make everything I can so that doesn't happen.
Mr. Chair, if everybody agrees you strike it, we can strike it, but you just looked at your notes and you referenced dates that you've had those notes. You said that we've asked for those things, but at the last meeting, when we said this meeting was for bylaws, you didn't bring any of that up until after the next day when you went to the county.
That is incorrect. It's on the recording. That one did pick up on the recording. And yes, sir, I did. This is the book I wrote at on January 2nd. This is everything I read. As I read it, I checked it off. I've now added other things to the list that you all have spoken about. You knew this was coming. And so it was put on the agenda for your purpose. I don't understand any other way that it can work other than that.
I agree. We need the information. I don't think probably listen to it. It's the way that it happened, and that was the purpose of putting this in there so it doesn't happen that way again. And whenever we spoke, and you basically told me it's too bad you're the chair and you set the agenda, that's when I started having a problem. Okay, because that's not the way that I envisioned the board working. I didn't envision it working that way when I voted for you to be the chair. I expected that we work together as a team and that we communicate these things.
Yes, sir. When I spoke to you on the phone, I had already spoke to you a couple of times in regards to this specific issue. So this is, and I explained to you why these rules are in place and what they're for. And then you said, you basically mentioned that we'll just change the rules, which was exactly what the last board would do. So there's a specific reason why there's a chairman. And if you all don't want me chairman, I can be removed at any time. So that can be on your list if you wish. But right now, I'm serving in this role, and these are the rules that we need to go by.
I'm going to go with Mr. Stewart's suggestion, what you said to us. And I do think it might be I know what Mr. Stroud's doing is doing. There's part of me that agrees with that. But there's going to have to be some trust issues. We're going to have to trust. But just as long as things are sent out to us, we have a chance to review and say we'd like for that to be removed. He holds the power to remove it or not, but is that what you were saying? Yeah.
Essentially, it was Mr. Sully's suggestion, but that may be a compromise position that would actually work if the chair sent it out in time before. The agenda does need to go to the public in a timely manner, so it does add a little bit of a time burden on you, but that still might work.
Sir, honestly, I don't think it's any different than what's written. The only difference is where it says agreed upon, but I think it was mentioned the Friday before. But the thing is, if we get it the Friday before and it's a change on the staff, they won't know or have the opportunity to do anything about it until they come to work the next week. So I don't want to put any more burden on the people that have to do the work than absolutely necessary. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I will take it on myself before I put it on them. So I'd rather just strike it then I had put additional burden on the people who have to do the work, or, and get it put on their plate.
So it's not an additional burden, it is their work. So if they're tasked with bringing this forward, they're tasked with bringing it forward, it would be ridiculous not to give them time to do a good product. So nothing on this agenda is problematic for the staff. They produce the documents, they send I sent all these documents to all of y'all. Y'all been getting a lot of emails with these documents. So you can read them over and you can, that's one of the reasons why we wanted that if you don't have backup documents, that we won't hear it. So if the staff can't produce the document, it will be taken off the agenda. So anyhow, we need to get this done and move on.
What, before we close the meeting, do we not go over the agenda for the next meeting?
In the past, we have not.
We have not.
No, in my whole time here, we have not. And Mr. Stroud, I can just say from my experience, there are things that staff brings at the agenda meeting, staff brings to our attention that they've already asked to be on the agenda. We could always have, if it gets removed, then it's understood that it'll be presented on the next agenda. So that, sometimes the staff needs a little extra time, and if they can't get it by Friday, then it'd be automatically included on the next agenda. Maybe that could be a provision that we could do.
But that's stuff that they've already been working on. It's not new material, things they've already been working on. No additional work has been levied against them, and it's just slid 2 weeks, right?
Right, that's what I was saying, because maybe there's something that has come up that they're not going to be able to have it done on Friday, because I never liked it dropped on Tuesday or Monday. We didn't have enough time to look at it. So would it allow it that instead of being removed from the agenda, it would just be moved over to the next agenda so that they have ample time to get the information ready?
It can be tabled, Robert's Rules of Order. It can be tabled till the next meeting. It can be tabled forever. You can put any reference on that table you wish.
So unless there's a time limit that's prescribed by law.
Yes, sir.
So what is your timeline currently?
My timeline for what?
For creating an agenda, what's the timeline that you normally?
As soon as we leave out of here today, I'll gather all the information that was put out by you all and then work on the next agenda. And so, this was a quick turnaround on this work session. And then we have a meeting the 15th, 16th. So that agenda will be worked on soon. I don't have any problem sending out a draft agenda.
Gotcha. On a normal meeting schedule where there's a 2-week interval between, what would your timeline be for getting the agenda over to everybody?
I'm sorry, Ms. Bender said something. I couldn't.
No,
I think Ms. Fish wanted to.
Oh, go ahead.
Chair, Madam Chair, Board, we have an agenda item meeting tomorrow. So typically we go through the agenda, whoever has something that would like to be on the next meeting, which was January 16th. We meet tomorrow with staff, department heads, and we go over what discussion items they want to go through. And then typically they will get all the attachments in by Wednesday. And then I create the agenda and send it out to the board and the public at the same time by that Friday. So if you're saying you just want to draft without all the attachments, that's one thing, but you all have to decide on, the board, how you want to proceed.
Gotcha. Where I was going with that is wanted to understand the timeline. It sounds like there's ample time already built in. I mean, it's not like we just started this. It's not like we just started this process this month. Y'all have been doing it for a while. Sounds like there's ample time built in, and we can go back and revisit these bylaws. If we determine they don't function for us in the future, we can come back and readdress this. So I recommend we leave it alone and give it a little bit more time. I mean, yeah, we're a new group of people. We're going through that forming and storming process right now, but let's leave it alone for a little bit not introduce more variables, and then see if it works for us down the line. And if not, we can go back and revisit it.
Ms. Bender, you okay with that?
Yes. The only one that I wanted consideration on whether we make that the documents have to be in by Friday, and then if not, they can be moved to the next meeting. And that, so that there's not surprises in any board member or the public not being able to absorb the information in a timely manner.
No, so there should be no surprise actions. There should be no surprise actions for the public or the board or the employees. That's what occurred in the past, and that's not what we want to occur in the future. That's what we're trying to do. Right, but that verbiage, I think we've come upon a solution that I'll send out a draft as soon as it gets worked up, and then you all will return that, and then we'll go from there. Is that agreed upon?
And just to keep you from losing your mind, no news is good news. In other words, if nobody responds, silence is consent.
No news is not always good news. But anyhow, well, so, okay, we solved that issue. Ms. Bender, you had a couple issues?
Did Mr. Stroud able to go through his whole?
We did the public comment, right? We agreed upon that.
I know there was an agenda order because I wanted to make a suggestion many times, and I've been to a lot of workshops on how to run a proper meeting. And one of the cool suggestions I saw was to put constitutional officers' reports or county attorney reports or county administrator reports inside the consent agenda so that it is our responsibility to read them. And then if we would like something to be brought out, we could have them come to the meeting and pull it out of the consent agenda and then ask our questions. It also enables the meetings to go faster because we don't have to have every cigarette tax report, every treasurer's report. It's our responsibility to read the consent agenda. And if we want to pull something out, we could contact the chair and ask them to have that officer or department head come to the meeting. It'd cut down on some time. So that's one thing I would like to include in the lineup.
If you had a time to review the change to the agenda, is it moved the reports where the county employees have to come in and provide reports earlier in the meeting so they can provide the report and they can get out of here. If they need to stay, or they want to stay, that's up to them. But I want them to be able to come in, do what they need to do, and get out of here, and not have them sit around and here all night and wait. So let's move them earlier.
Well, I'm suggesting putting their reports in the consent agenda so they don't even have to come unless we have a question about an item, and then we can put it at the beginning of the meeting if we were going to pull it out of the consent agenda, but then they come for that meeting because we have a question. But if they don't, it's in the consent agenda for the public to read and for us to read, and they don't have to come, and they can spend time with their families at night.
I think Ms. Bender is referring to, if I'm not mistaken, like the sheriff comes every meeting and he tells you about the cigarette report. That could be included in the consent agenda, the report, and he wouldn't waste his time coming out here.
Yeah, there's no argument with that.
Okay.
Unless there's some sort of issue, then we can ask him to come in and talk about it.
Yeah, we have to ask the chair to pull it out of the consent agenda.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Bender?
I didn't know how detailed I had marked these up last year, and I didn't know how detailed we wanted to get, but we could revisit them when they're brought back. But I have to say one of the best things I like is the discussion and then action, because over my years, I did not like that because I don't think we're doing the citizens' due diligence when we're rushed to make decisions, unless it is an emergency situation. But I did have one on, I think it's page 7 with the clerk of the board. I think we need to change that. It says shall be the county administrator, so we need to fix that to say whatever it needs to say.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on page 7, that's one of the things that I flagged as well. It's mandatory now that it's a county administrator, and we'll fix that to give you flexibility. That's what you want.
And then the last thing, and this was big for me during the whole last couple of years, is NDAs. What kind of could we put in the bylaws? Because I don't agree with having staff members sign for us when we don't know anything about them. So can that be in the bylaws that?
So Ms. Bender, I was, last 2 years, I was big on nobody signing any NDAs for me. I would like to just poll the board to see if they want someone else to sign an NDA for them. Mr. Sully? Mr. Stroud?
No.
Mr. Davis?
No.
Ms. Bender?
No.
Mr. Collins, no. So I think we can just change that completely.
And then one other thing, because I was around during the COVID times, if there's ever something where somebody gets sick or that and has to provide electronic meetings, I just wanted to make sure, is that clarified? If they go past their limit of whatever the percentage, if they're sick, that is okay under the newer rules. Is that correct, Mr. Stewart?
But I think the policy that's in here is okay.
I just wanted to make sure, because you don't want sick people coming to the meeting and spreading it to everybody, so.
No, you don't. That issue is going to be up again this year, I'll tell you. It was up last year, so it may change again, but right now, I think the policy that was in here is up to date.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stewart, is there any other changes that you flagged?
There were a couple places where it said her, and it should just say county attorney, and that was it. And I saw the same that Mr. Stroud said. Now, otherwise, the document's perfectly workable. It's just if there's anything then particular that you all don't like, that you don't want in there.
Okay, I think that we agreed on a lot of these changes, and you all have notes to that. And so we'll have to bring that forward to the next meeting. So members, that will be on the next meeting to approve it with changes.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
sir. The one thing that I had to note in there on chapter 8, subparagraph B, about removing the words, no person shall thereafter be recognized to address the board. Is that something that can or cannot be changed?
So you're talking about section,
Order and conduct of business.
remove the words, no person shall therefore be recognized to address the board, replaced with persons may be called upon to provide clarifying information by the board. Is that, you're talking about that during
Yes, sir.
public comment? Or are you talking about that?
It's, if there's a discussion or something that's taking place and there's somebody that has amplifying information, that we're able to call on them to get it. Because right now it says we cannot.
So,
Mr. Stroud, like a citizen, like if somebody in the audience that might be a subject matter expert?
It could be a citizen or it could be one of our employee.
right, so that, I think that's more for employee, but sometimes I do understand where you're coming from about sometimes a citizen makes a comment and we would like more information and we're not allowed to ask them for more information. So I think that, if the board member wants the clarifying information, your chair should be astute enough to pay attention and you notify the chair you'd like some clarifying information. Unless there's a glaring reason not to, then we do it. But I don't think it's for chitter chatter for citizens back and forth discussion.
I'm sorry.
Could just be at the discretion of the chair, Mr. Chairman, if that's what you want.
Are you all okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else? Any other changes, Mr. Stroud, Mr. Sullins, Mr. Day? Ms. Bender? Okay. We'll move on to the next item. We have to do the code of ethics. Is there any changes to the code of ethics? Hearing none, is there any motions?
We can bring that in next time for your action if you want, Mr. Chairman, as the entire document.
Okay, that'd be great. Bylaws 003.
Mr. Chair, we need to address the Board of Directors for the Service Authority. Same bylaws.
Okay,
So I've already given, because usually the Service Authority follows the Board of Supervisors. So our new member, is there anything you would like to see or anybody else like to see? Usually they coincide with the same document for the Service Authority. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to.
I appreciate that, Ms. Pender. I have a couple comments, I think, for the rules and procedures for the Service Authority, and I think what you guys have discussed so far for the bylaws. I think I'm in agreement with where you guys all stood so far.
So no changes?
Nothing else.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's your time now.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
what do you want to do with the time on the Service Authority meeting? Since you're doing the supervisors at 5:30, do you want to have the Service Authority come in and half an hour early? You want to take a break and do it? Because right now they're set at the same time.
So did we agree last time to combine? And so that's why we have another chair. So we won't do all this chair wrangling that when we do the Service Authority stuff, you'll come up and take a seat. You'll just stand tall. And then when we go back to the Board of Supervisors, you don't have to go up and come back and all that nonsense.
Mr. Chair,
Deal with the Service Authority first. Yes.
that's how they used to do in the past. There's enough room for all of us up there.
So will the public comment be for the Service Authority, and then one for the Board of Supervisors, and then one for the Board of Supervisors at the end?
That would be up to the board. We could combine them together if you would like. That would make it a little bit more efficient. We could just combine them together.
I would prefer we combine them, otherwise we risk rehashing the same comments second time on.
So we combine them together.
I say, okay.
Yeah, okay.
We're good.
Okay. Finish.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Stewart, you need to depart, is that correct? Okay, thank you so much we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Department of Engineering, Mr. Bryce Young. He's just going to give us an overview of the existing courthouse, the future preschool, and the middle school. Mr. Young?
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. To start this off, we'll talk about the old middle school. The original portion of the middle school was constructed in 1975 with an addition in 1998. ECS performed a hazardous materials assessment as well as a envelope and mold assessment. In August of 23, due to these assessments, demolition was recommended by ECS. Next steps with this project would be authorize the county administrator to issue a PO for the preparation of demolition bid documents. Moving on to the preschool.
Would you like us to discuss that before we move on?
It's up to you all.
Okay, any comments in regards to that?
Try tearing down the old middle school.
Yes, sir. Put together bid documents.
I mean, it's not usable. It costs more to fix it than it would to rebuild it, looks like. About the same.
According to the studies, it's a strong possibility it would. The building does have a roof over top of a roof, and due to the upper roof being sealed, we don't even know what's underneath that upper roof between the two roofs. And even if we pulled the upper roof off, we have no idea what we're gonna find underneath. It could be uh, decayed beams and structure within the roof. So, furthermore, it would provide a better site, a more useful site if we start from scratch.
It's my understanding too, like all the pipes need to be replaced, everything, and it needs to be ripped out, gutted pretty much. Is that right?
That was not mentioned in the report, but it's very possible.
So you all had an opportunity to look at the report?
The study that was conducted?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So as we have said in our past discussions, we will put that on the next agenda for discussion and possible action. I would encourage each and every one of you to get Mr. Young to give you a tour of there. And I think your decision will be pretty easy. And the preschool too. I would ask that all board members, if you have opportunity, please get a tour of these buildings. You have to get a hold of Dr. Boyd for the school, and then everything else is county owned. Strong?
So I've toured the building. It's been a little while because I was a part of the study. But are there, I guess I have two questions. One, are there things in there that might be reused, like seats in the auditorium or something that somebody might could use? I don't know. No. And, and the other question is, whenever it's torn down, is the county going to incur a bill for disposing of it?
So the county would pay a contractor to tear it down and get rid of it. As far as the contents of the building, at first it went out, our procurement folks attempted to sell anything in there. And those people that came and bought things, bought rooms. A lot of them they cleared out. And there's some rooms that they just decided they didn't want anything in it. The schools have gone through it to get some historical items, photos, those type of things. But I don't see a whole lot in there now useful, but I would encourage y'all to go through it.
Mr. Chair, I would also like to add, there's a lot of intrusion or ways that people can get in now, and it's sort of like a hazard to the public that it really does need to go sooner rather than later, because a lot of the windows are busted and the doors are broken, and there's not much left to be saved.
Yes, there's gang graffiti all through the school. There's people busted in. Some organization has busted in and done all kinds of spray painting.
Right. Yeah, I think with the disposal, I understand we're with our somebody we put our RFPs to get bid, but I mean, was the county going to get charged to put it in the landfill in the county? I guess
that's a good question. Mr. Young, would you investigate that?
I certainly can.
Your next item, sir.
Next item would be the preschool feasibility study conducted in 6/23. It included a needs assessment. This was conducted by Mosley and is expanded in December of 23 to include a needs assessment for a second-story building or two-story building, preschool on the first floor, and possibly a school administration on the second floor. The study also included a master plan that has Fourth Elementary School and connecting road to existing middle school. Next steps with that would be authorize the county administrator to issue a RFP for design based on what the board decides they want to do with that property.
Okay, so that was in the packet also, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion what to do with that. So he's just presenting it. Next meeting will be on again for more discussion for you all to think about. The process of what we're going to do with that.
This is for things done to the current.
This is the old middle school property, and also, Mr. Chair, sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to, if you actually look at the property, it has a lot of wetlands on it, and concern, I mean, I helped build the cross-country course on it, so I've gone over the whole ground, is from the aerial, you don't see all the wetlands. So my biggest disagreement with the former board to just going and building a preschool was, if we want to do more on that site, it has to all be planned at the same time. You can't just plop a building down and then hope you can put other buildings on there later. So because of the wetlands, you can't really see from the air. We need to make sure we do it correctly if we're going to make like a campus of that whole area. And the connecting road would be very helpful because it could be connected to the middle school and the high school. There is room, but it all has to be done and planned. You don't have to do it all at the same time, but it needs to be plotted out before you do it, or you're not going to be able to do all that on that property.
So there was, if you all looked at the packet, there was several options. One where a preschool would be in the rear and a future elementary would be here, and there would be, excuse me, a connecting road to the other parts of the campus. So there's like option 1, 2, and 3. There's 3 options, right?
Correct.
So what we'd have to do is, as a group, you know, we've got the information, what the options are, and then we'll start discussing which option that we are going to approve so we can move forward, stop, or have the plan. Is there any questions about that particular one?
I just wanted, Mr. Chair, to also offer, I will take a walking tour on that property for anyone. I took Mr. Young there, and I took Mr. David Bush from the school through the whole property, showing, you know, the challenges. So if anybody wants to walk on the cross-country course, I would be more than willing to show you guys the whole area.
Is there any other discussion with that particular item at this moment? Mr. Young, next.
All right, next on my agenda here is the existing courthouse once we occupy the new courthouse. Mosley actually presented to the Board of Supervisors in September of 23 on this. ECS did an assessment in August of 23 about the issues that can be mitigated, and it was concluded that the better ventilation and improvement to the HVAC system had to be made, as well as some envelope issues, as in the roof and the siding and such would have to be corrected just to seal the envelope in and make it more watertight. And this would help with a lot of the mold issues that have been seen and recognized in the past within the building. Other than that, the next decision would have to be made regarding what level of improvements, if any, would need to happen to this building so that we could utilize it in the future.
Board members, any discussion in regards to, there was an estimate put out last year. It was pretty high, but that was the highest level. That was remodeling. That was like making the structure inside completely different than it is now. The issues with that building are the roof, the HVAC, the paint inside. Improper paint was used at one time. It's chipping all over the place. Go in there, you'll see what I mean. But so we need to decide, do we want the $20 million level, We want the $3 million level, or we want the $12 million level? So any discussion, gentlemen, ladies?
My only thing is, my biggest thing I've complained about my whole time on the board is when we have a building we're vacating, we need to make a decision on what we're doing with it instead of leaving it to rot like the old middle school. So I would love the discussion because there are many options we can do with it. And the other thing for me is making sure we get the mold out of there permanently.
I would propose a work session with the architect. And this has been discussed with the architectural firm, and they would be open to coming and having this discussion with you as well.
Would you all like the work session with the architect? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, give us the available dates. Please send available dates to the board members so we can, what's that thing you use, Ms. Hahn? Some dance pole thing, what's it called? When you say whether you're available or not? Doodle pole. Doodle pole. Some kind of pole. So if we can do a doodle poll, I learned is that you send out and then you say what dates you're available and then it molds it all together, find out when we can do it. Are you all okay with that? Okay. All right, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
As well.
Ms. Hahn, overview of the budget process, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Ms. Chair, members of the board. This is just a quick overview. In November, I sent out an email to all the department heads in the county asking them, prior to that time, Ms. Cobb sets up everyone's budget files in SharePoint, and then they're instructed in that email to go out to SharePoint to pull that budget file up to work on their budget for the next fiscal year. Then I give them approximately a month, and I did have some ask for an extension to complete it by the beginning of the first week in January, which was last week. So all of those budget files are in SharePoint now, and finance is in the process of reviewing those. That's for the operating budget and also a template for things for the capital improvement plan. Templates are out there. Anyone who wants to request funds in the CIP also needs to complete that template and load them back into SharePoint. Once finance is finished reviewing those, we set up meetings with all the department heads, go over the budget line by line, see if there's anywhere that we have some wiggle room where we can make some cuts. We have very candid discussions with the department heads, and after that, meet with the county administrator to go over that, and then we establish a work sessions with the boards to go over budget. So that's just a quick overview, and I don't know what direction the board wants to go in. When do you want to try to start those work sessions so that we can make sure that we've gotten everything completed on our end?
So last year, the budget went pretty deep into the year. So every other county in the nation had a budget before we did. That's an exaggeration. But it went way too far, and the CIP came after it, and it was just, so I would ask you all for an aggressive schedule, work sessions.
Was some of that tardiness, was that driven by the state budget because we get money from them, but we don't know how much that was going to be?
So yes, we do get money from the state.
I agree with being aggressive, but if we are we going to end up waiting around for a long time?
Yes, so like last year when the state couldn't make a decision about budget items, and But so what most counties do is they set a budget, and then if there's any changes with the state, then they go back and amend their budgets accordingly. Sometimes we get more, sometimes we get less. So, is that how you all want to handle it? You want to go aggressively? Yes? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So, can you do your doodle poll? Okay, for the work sessions? They're generally, last year they did them on Wednesdays, and I actually moved my Bible study so I can do it on Wednesdays if it works for y'all.
My only concern with the budget is I want to make sure that we have, when certain departments have needs and wants, I know in the past some administrators have purged before we see it, and I don't want the purging anymore because I want to see everything. Because sometimes, I'm going to give an example about this room. There needs to be improvements in this room, and it kept getting cut out, and it shouldn't be that way. The board should be able to see everything that the staff needs, and then, we could have edits from the county administrator saying, I think these needs to be removed, but I don't want it removed before we see it, because sometimes there's things that shouldn't be cut out. So I would like that changed. We need to see everything that's a need, everything from the ultimate need to the Christmas wish list.
So, Ms. Bender, right now, there's not a county administrator, so it comes straight to the board.
Right, I'm just saying for the future, Ms. Hahn was asking direction. So when we have a county administrator, and I'm bringing up just this room in particular, the public likes our meetings. They like to see it run efficiently. We should give them what they want. So it shouldn't be cut out before we see it and have a say in debating that topic.
Any discussion on that, board members? Want to agree? Agree? Yes, ma'am, so when you get the full from the departments, could you forward it to us?
So the full from the departments, in what fashion do you want me to forward that? Because as you know, the budget worksheets that we bring are large. And if we forward that to you on this laptop to take a look at, or do you want us to print this off and put them over in your boxes to take a look at? What format?
How about SharePoint? Can we do a SharePoint?
I don't want SharePoint.
It's just if you're using your laptop, it's a small document.
Yeah, I know, and I usually ask for the big sheet to be printed out. I just want to make sure we see everything.
What did you say you wanted, sir?
I don't want SharePoint. Okay. So I usually get a binder printed out so I can compare things. But it's up to y'all what you want.
I concur.
You want
I like to write notes and highlight all the stuff.
Would you like Mr. Sullivan?
I'd like a binder, please.
Davis? Binders all around.
Okay, and I had one other thing on budget that I just wanted to bring up tonight. Back in November, I believe it was, the Board of Supervisors authorized us to advertise for a project coordinator for the new financial system, and staff went ahead and advertised for that. We've held interviews. We'd like to come back to the next meeting with an action item to fill that position and transfer money from the CIP over into operating budget in the current fiscal year to get that position filled. We're we have a deployment meeting scheduled this Friday with the Tyler Technologies, and right now we're missing that project coordinator, and staff is already taxed heavily with trying to get other accomplishments done.
So from the previous request for that person, I'm the one that voted against it out of the 5. So you already know where I stand. Other members?
How much is the salary, and was it budgeted already for this year?
So we haven't, the money is still in the CIP, and I did not print off, I had a doctor's appointment today, so I was out of the office half a day, but I didn't print off the previous board report, but it's approximately $213,000 that we have remaining in the budget for the financial system for project coordination. We had a consultant, Barry Dunn, who worked with us up through and signing off on the contract with Tyler Technologies. And so we had approximately 213,000 left. We had advertised a salary of 80,000 plus benefits. For fiscal year 24, that would be $48,537 to transfer out of CIP into operating.
Okay, just to clarify, I apologize. So the money exists. It's not earmarked for anything else. We're not robbing Peter to pay Paul to make this happen.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm good with it.
So can I just bring up one other thing? Before you all took office, I discussed with each one of y'all a part-time position, a project coordinator or a senior advisor for the Board of Supervisors in regards to the finances that would probably come on in February. So I would suggest that we might go that route as we discussed earlier.
Ms. Hahn, if you need somebody to attend the meeting this Friday, then I can look at the schedule and see, because I happen to be a certified PMP and I'm willing to come to the meeting. I don't support the hiring of a position to perform that task. So,
Ms. Bender?
My only concern, I'm just throwing it out there, because this position then would be a permanent position, so we don't have it funded. So this would be a cost in the next budget cycle, which is a concern.
Not in the next budget cycle, but probably there's still money for next fiscal year. But after that, it would become a county position.
Mr. Davis?
I'm not so much on, I believe, I agree with Mr. Stroud as far as filling the position.
So I think it's the will of the board to hold off on that. Mr. Stewart did have a suggestion for the job announcement for the part-time to assist. And I'll just read the duties and responsibilities that he put in here. Assistant manager of county operations. Develop and maintain quality relationships with board members, constitutional officers, regulatory agencies, staff, and public. Provide policy and financial guidance and recommendation to the Board of Supervisors and Board of Directors. Provide leadership to the staff. Oversee budget development. It says attend Board of Supervisors and Board of Directors meeting. Assist in developing agendas for the Board of Supervisors and Board of Directors. Provide oversight to King George County Service Authority. Assist in economic development strategies and projects. So a bachelor's degree in public administration, finance, business, or related experience, and minimum of blank years experience as a chief administrator officer role, and willing to commit up to blank hours per week. So that's what he suggested. There were 5 different names for that part-time position.
Mr. Chair, can we put that on the agenda for the 16th? Maybe it would be, because then everybody can review it and the public can review it.
You all want it on the agenda for the 16th?
I'm good with that.
Mr. Sullins? Mr. Davis?
Sir.
All right, we'll put that on there. Ms. Fish, can you also circulate that document? You're going to get.
Need to add to that, because nowhere did I see where it had a project officer, a requirement for a certification or education or anything in project management. And that's where.
So there was education, but so what are you saying?
It said there's a requirement in there for project management?
No, for education.
I'm sorry?
Public administration, but not project management.
Yeah, public administration is a project management.
Okay, hey, what's y'all's feedback?
We can provide it. I need to get a copy of that and I'll go back.
Yes, sir, you will. Just came out late this afternoon. So, right, I just wanted to bring it forward. Okay, Ms. Hahn, your next item would be, purchasing procedures manual.
And so each of you all were at the orientation meeting where you got the purchasing manual. That applies to county and service authority and for the schools. Everyone follows the county procurement purchasing guidelines. I know you were not present at that orientation. Here's a printed copy if you'd like that. So I guess when added that to the agenda just to make sure that everybody has that information.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hahn, that was Ms. Bender's.
Yeah, so that's okay. This is very important, and it'll come up later because on the first day after the meeting, we did have some issues with procurement. So this is very vital. Everyone reads over this, and you'll be discussing this in a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am?
Questions for Ms. Hahn?
Yes. On that, I think I've got it in my bag, on that, one of the handouts that we got in the budget. Thank you, sir. So whenever I was looking at that, I've seen a number of items that if there were duplicates and the invoice numbers were the same, purchase numbers are the same amounts,
So
but the total.
What document are you referring to, sir? Is that the?
Mr. Dines, that's the only document I have of that. Okay.
Are you referring to the warrants? Yeah, those are the warrants. So those are, that comes from the financial system after the invoices are counted for the system. And so you might see the same invoice number if it's split between different coding and off of the same purchase order. So I would need to know which ones you had in question in order to answer your question on that.
Okay. Well, I've got an example. It's kind of hard to see and for everybody to see here. But it says the vendor is, what's Muni Billing?
Muni billing. Okay, so Muni billing, it's
Professional services.
so Muni billing provides. There are third-party administrator for the service authority that handles our billing, customer billing. So we pay Muni billing for those services, but also any county departments that have water or sewer, when those bills are paid, they're paid to Muni billing because they handle that service.
Okay, well, this, my.
So it's split, Muni billing is split between water and sewer. And so that's not, so that's a service authority invoice, but it's split between a percentage is charged against the water GL code and another is to the wastewater GL code.
Okay, maybe that may answer a lot of my questions then, because I see the same purchase order number, the same vendor name, the invoice is the same with the same amount twice.
Right, because
So,
it's split 50-50.
Okay, that explains a whole lot in there for that. Okay. That explains a whole lot. Okay, and another question, and this may not be you, it could be anybody that has the answer. Who is the responsible officer for the county property that goes around and makes sure that what the county paid for is still there?
Such as like?
Well, such as I got this phone and I got a computer and I didn't sign for anything. And neither did any of the other supervisors that I'm aware of. So I'm just wondering how you account for it. I found a phone this morning. I turned it into the sheriff's department. It's laying in the road. It wasn't a county phone, I don't think. But there's a security issue with phones, computers. We have to meet requirements as a company. We do government contracts and work. So we have to account for things and the information that is on those things. And I just think it'd be a good practice. The other thing is we have vehicles. I mean, you look through there, there's a lot of things the county buys. So I'm just wondering who makes sure that
The information technology items that you have would be through information technology, your computers, your phones. We do keep an inventory of vehicles here in finance department. That's handled under, excuse me, under the procurement staff. Keep up with that. The sheriff's office has a list of their vehicles. Once they get the new ones and get them outfitted, they share that with finance.
So the county buys things. The county buys tools. I seen an issue where we paid like $300 and something twice for gloves. So I guess you split it to both accounts. So I'm just curious, did we ever get the gloves? Who got the gloves? How, you know, who is verifying the stuff the county's buying to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse?
Can I step in here, Mr. Stroud?
Sir?
Can I step in here?
Absolutely.
So when I was on the school board, I had a lot of the same questions as you. What do we have? What do we have? So there was no inventory at the schools at one time. So you're suggesting that we do an inventory and so we can see what we own, and then on the second part of that, make sure what we own is not missing.
Yes, sir, I am. And to me, that goes hand in hand with the budget. Because if somebody, and I haven't seen what people are asking to buy, but if we're asking to buy something, I want to know what happened with the last one. And it's just.
No, so I think that's good financial management, to know what you got, know when something's life is going to be done, you know, like a lawnmower only has a life for so long, especially the amount of grass these people cut here. So could we put that on the February agenda? Because it'll be right during budget season.
Sir, I would go as far as to say that maybe the county looks at assigning responsible officers within the departments, and it's their responsibility to make sure that everything in their department, that they sign for it, they account for it, and they make sure it's there. And that goes hand in hand with a sustainment plan. If you own it, you need to make sure that you've got a sustainment plan for maintaining it, replacing it. That way we don't have somebody walking in when they asking for a truck, and because they didn't plan on replacing one, and we're just finding out about it.
Mrs. Bender been fussing about that for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years that I can remember. So does everybody agree with putting this on the agenda so we can move forward with a plan?
Yes.
I want to add something to that because I was going to bring that up for the Service Authority. So one of the biggest things for the Service Authority is to actually accurately assess how much the Service Authority is worth. We need to have an accounting for everything the Service Authority owns. So I would like to add that also onto the Service Authority too, that we have an accounting of everything we lease or own, because I know we do lease quite a few vehicles, that we do have an accounting for that.
We do have an accounting for all the leased vehicles, and there's probably, if it's licensed, it got a license plate and everything on that, we also have that information. The titles to the vehicles are housed in finance department.
If any of our vehicles have been in accidents and stuff, it keeps those records. Who has the record of the vehicle and its maintenance history and all that?
So the finance doesn't get the maintenance history on any of the vehicles, but if a vehicle is involved in an accident, the department involved has to submit reports to the finance department, who enters it into our Baycorp system to file a claim with our insurer.
So Mr. Stroud, we'll work on this in February and we'll move forward with this. I think everyone is in agreement.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Yep.
Yeah.
You're not on the agenda. Yes, sir. You have something quick?
February 6th or the 20th?
Whatever the February meeting date was.
The 6th or the 20th? Which one would give staff enough time?
What do you want on the 6th or the 20th? Ms. Bender?
You brought up time, so which one works? Go ahead.
Oh, Mr. Stroud, you're exactly right. We usually have a form that can be filled out through DocuSign or written. That when you have new equipment, like you have gotten your Surface tablet and your phone, you fill all that information out and the serial numbers and everything. So that should have been in your bag, but it wasn't put in your bag. So we'll have to get that to you. That's how we keep track of equipment that is mobile.
So what date were we going to do that, Ms. Fish asked? There's 2 dates in February.
February 6th or the 20th. I just want to give staff enough time to compile.
Yeah, so this is a new thing.
20th.
So it'll be the 20th. Everybody agree?
Yes, sure.
You asking for a recess?
I just, before the recess, I just have one. So for the service authority, since we're still talking about the service authority, that's a little more complicated because of wastewater and water. So I talked to Mr. Quisenberry today, and I've even talked to Mr. Stewart, is that we need to maybe put up an RFP about a company that can actually do that for us, or an individual that can assess all of our water and wastewater. So February 20th, we might be able to bring that a little earlier so that we could get guidance on how to go out and look for a resource management company to give us what we actually own, what we have in stock, and what is the value, so that the service authority, which is a little different than the county assets, because we need a valuation of the service authority and its equipment. So I just want to know from the service authority members, would you like it on the earlier February meeting instead? Or on the January 16th as a discussion with some verbiage of how we would go out and look for that kind of person to then put out an RFP for.
So is my understanding, Ms. Bender, that you want an assessment of the assets of the water authority?
The water and sewer authority.
Water
Yes.
and sewer. And the purpose of that is to make decisions on.
Well, we need to have evaluation and insurance purposes, also to know what we have. Do we really know what we have? Everything.
Yeah.
And what we have in stock, all those things. That's, as you know, for many years, I think we have too many stuff in too many abandoned buildings.
So take, for instance, this assessment with value would tell us that Hop Yard wastewater treatment plant is worth $30 million. On and on, so we would know the value of our property. So if we move forward with whatever we're going to do, we'll have a value of our property. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, yes, and I want to bring up the past. Is many years ago when Aqua came and ran our service authority for a brief while, when there was an offer made for the service authority, all we had was the insurance value. So we didn't know. It's basically, you're looking at a private entity to give you a price when you don't even have a price. So we just need to know it too for insurance purposes. We need to know what we have and the value of it. Go ahead.
I would also say, depending on what happens with the service authority, what the 5 of you actually choose to do, I think there was just a emergency repair that just happened. Was that well pump 10 years old, 15 years old? Was it 5 years past its, lifespan? That I don't think we know that right now. So that inventory on how old this equipment is, when it needs to be maintained, when it last maintained, I don't know if we have that.
100% agree with you, because one of the biggest thing I've seen on my time here, and I'm going to give the example of the King George Elementary roof that was dropped on us and said, oh, we need this amount of money. Well, you knew that roof had a certain lifespan. So it should have been budgeted out that at this year we would need the money to replace the roof. So we need to stop doing that old behavior and now actually have long plans. And I know Dr. Boyd and I have talked about it many times, and he's working on one, but we need to do it on our side of the house also.
Okay. A member has asked for a recess. Sorry, Mr. Minor. We'll take a 5-minute recess of the King George Board of Supervisors.
And the Service Authority.
Okay, sorry. Sir? Who's knocking at the door? Minor,
Yes, sir.
please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I have a brief presentation on the Economic Development Strategic Plan outline. With the first slide is just a recap over the current strategic plan. In 2018, this plan was initiated mostly from the development that the current Board of Supervisors thought would come from the I-95 construction and the Harry Nice Bridge replacement. So they identified a few ways to sort of counteract that, and also also prioritize some objectives based off of a SWOT analysis: commercial and industrial development, tourism, recreation and county promotion, infrastructure, housing accessibility, strategic relationships, healthcare. In order to monitor that status of that, they wanted to conduct surveys, take a look at labor statistics, retail sales tax revenue, occupancy rates, property and rent values, number of new business licenses. In conclusion, what they wanted to do was address some larger issues: lack of reliable broadband, lack of healthcare providers, deficiency in accessible housing, update the county zoning ordinance, redefine our culture. And what they meant by that was our relationships with small businesses and economic development projects, stimulate investment by fiscal and administrative and regulatory policy, so incentives. So the current mission and vision of that: maintain a comprehensive economic development program that encourages controlled development and diverse revenue streams in order to manage our inevitable growth while preserving the historical, cultural, and rural character of our community. The vision statement from that plan: this is our current plan: a vibrant and connected community that fosters diverse economic development and visionary growth while honoring its rural landscape. So the status, I'm not going to go through each objective, but I provided a breakdown in the presentation that sort of went through the status of these, just based off of my assessment. And I would say it's pretty accurate, just being here in the county over the last 4 years and some change. I'm not going to go through each one of these. I'm going to try to make this brief, but this is just some of the critiques I had based off of the old strategic plan. One in particular, I'll just use an NSF Dahlgren objective 2 up here: deter development that is inconsistent with the base's needs. The new zoning ordinance adopted a military compatibility area overlay district, but a map has not yet been drawn, awaiting a response from NSF liaison. So just sort of going through some of the things that the current strategic plan, either there wasn't executed or wasn't executed fully, or just giving you an explanation as to why these things are the way they are on the previous slide here. So then going back, there's another one I wanted to point out. So explore telemedicine grant opportunities. And I basically just said, I'm not sure how this is an economic development initiative. So in this existing strategic plan, it's just not, in my opinion, very defined on what we want to be, and also the goals and objectives of economic development for King George County. So just some things to improve on with this new economic development strategic plan: to not be so sporadic and have specific objectives with clear goals. So the current plan had 16 objectives with 3 to 4 desired outcomes for each objective. There's no community or board approved targeted industry sectors or initiatives in the current economic development strategic plan. Local business and industry feedback, and then set goals and tactics that can deliver an economic development result that the board and community can support. So what I'm trying to get at with the next economic development strategic plan for this county is, what does this county look like in the community eyes, the business community, and as well as the board? So what does that strategic plan look like? What does economic development look like for King George County moving into the future? So the process: so establish an executive steering committee to agree on an approach and strategy to execute that plan. My recommendation is to have EDA members on that, BOS members, obviously economic development staff, small business owners or owner, and then a major employer in their county. Provide a market assessment, so develop a fundamental understanding of the county demographics, industry, economic base, workforce data to disseminate to the key stakeholders, in this case, the steering committee. Conduct at least 2 SWOT analyses that include small business, government officials, large employers. Conduct multiple roundtable discussions, or interest group meetings is what I'm calling them, one for workforce development, 2 government official roundtables that would include the county staff, your zoning and planning department, your EDA, your board of supervisors, your planning commissioners, and I left out the service authority. They definitely should be included as far as the economic development strategy and success of the county. Business community, obviously, industrial park tenants, and then 1 roundtable discussion with defense and NSF Dahlgren, since those are our largest employers here in the county. Process continued. So just some of the discussion items: assets and opportunities, challenges and competition, industry and employers, concerns and barriers, transportation, road improvements, housing and workforce. 6th step would be to develop, or 5th step would be to develop an interim report with the executive steering committee. This will be presented to the board. Hey, here's what we found from our SWOT analysis. Here's what we're hearing in our roundtable discussions. Second would be to have 2 to 3 goal and tactic development meetings with that executive steering committee. Then have a peer comparison of best practices of counties of similar size, also as a similar industry makeup, and then develop an economic development action plan, and then deliver the final document to the board. So what I'm estimating right now is about a 6 to 7 month process to have this completed. The document I passed out to you is just if we started in April, here's what we would end up at. I'm just using April, just taking into consideration county administrator being able to be hired, Mr. Stewart will be here. And then any of the other positions that this board is taking into consideration, they can be a part of this process as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, take any concerns, take any positive or negative feedback as to the plan I'm presenting here tonight.
Mr. Sullins? I'm gonna say Mr. Stroud last. Sorry. I think you have a lot of feedback on this. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, there was 1 slide you had up there about the emergency room, and it said our population is not high enough for that.
Yes. So we don't have a large enough population. So that's another thing. We made healthcare is like a targeted industry for us, or not necessarily a targeted industry, but a targeted economic development initiative. This is hard to do without population. So these are some of the things that are, I would say, not necessarily out of the county's control, where we would need to build more homes in order to draw that type of industry here. That's such a population-driven industry. A county can't necessarily artificially stand up the healthcare industry in their community. You need population in order to support that.
Now, is there any way to, I know you're talking about our county, but there's a consensus of county right across the bridge in Maryland, or Montrose or Colonial Beach and all those areas, are they counting that population? Because those populations would be using this place as well.
I don't think it's high enough density and just not enough. So King George by itself was 27,000. Westmoreland somewhere in the range of 20 to 17,000. It's just not enough right now to sustain that type of those type of facilities right now. It doesn't mean that we can't get there or that we can't have enough activity to get there at some point. It's just right now, when they develop this plan, it's just not there. If I call a commercial developer, if I call a hospital, they're going to tell us we just don't have the population density right now to have something like that.
That you're positive about that. And you said think, and I'm listening to you. So I mean, that's something that we checked out a year ago. Is that something that we checked out?
So right now we just have enough for urgent care. We don't have enough for a hospital or for one of those ER centers right now.
Mr. Stroud? Ms. Bender?
The only thing I want to ask Mr. Minor, can we add, and this is something we've had a challenge with developers, is we need a fiscal impact statement that we create and not developers bring to us. Can that be part of this economic plan? Is actually what would cost to bring things?
So currently we use what's called Jobs EQ. So that's a software analysis tool where we put in what the economic impact of a project is. We'll take either the capital investment or the number of jobs based on that industry, and then it'll spit out basically a multiplier effect from that industry that will come to the county if that project shows up. That gets presented to the board. We'll definitely use it when we have incentives But that's what we use right now as a fiscal impact analysis. If you want something, I would say, more formal, you can hire a firm to do that for you based on that project, and they can use sort of the industry standards or just previous studies that they've done in the past. But that's currently what we use right now.
Because I was going to bring that up during the comp plan. We need to have that in there. I didn't know if that could be included as part of this.
Yeah, I mean, we can make it a policy thing where, I mean, we do it already, but if you want to make it formal as a part of this strategic plan, I don't see an issue with that.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Minor, thank you. My interest would, to be able to fund the water and sewer to the new industrial park as part of our economic strategy. So how that gets done, we'll need help with.
To fund the new water and sewer?
So the new industrial park.
Right, all 3 and 304.
Right.
Correct.
Doesn't have water and sewer.
That's right.
So you're not going to get any industry there without water and sewer.
Yep.
It's about a mile, isn't it about a mile?
Half a mile.
Half a mile.
Yep.
So we need to explore a way to finance that, not on top of taxpayer shoulders.
Agreed.
So that's my push. So thank you for coming.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We've already established a regular time for the Board of Supervisors and Board of Directors. Okay. Director of Human Resources, County Administrator, Executive Job Description Discussion. Mr. Metzler.
Good evening. Provided a couple different documents as far as what's been used in the past from a county administrator, job search, job description. I'm here tonight for feedback as to what you guys want to see posted, what is most important for you in that county administrator position. So I'm coming for feedback so we can get this posted and put out there and start attracting applicants.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we put it on the January 16th meeting because I still have to look this over again. I was so focusing on the bylaws and everything else, I did not peruse this deep enough.
So it's my wish to move forward this faster than that. What's your wish? I think we need to have some kind of consensus about what we want in the next county administrator and get that out there so we can fill that void. What's y'all's viewpoint on that, Mr. Sullins?
I'd like a little more time to look over it and make sure that it reflects what we really want.
Stroud?
Well, as already discussed tonight, I would add a requirement that they have a PMP, a program management professional, because we're talking about building projects in the county. We've got lots of projects that are going on. Whoever it is needs to have a background in managing.
So desired PMP, but definitely a background in managing large-scale projects.
Make the requirement PMP. It's a master's level certification.
Correct.
Or equivalent experience. So you just, when you require a certification or a license, you automatically knock out people that still have qualifications through job experience. So that's why I suggest or equivalent experience. Mr. Davis, do you have any input?
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Stroud said, and I would also add, if they have the experience to do the job, whatever that looks like. If there's a year requirements we want to put on there, or, well, I don't want to turn someone away because they have the ability to do the job. They don't have the degree, but they've done the work before, and if they can, we can track that, then that's fine.
So you can always require that they get whatever the board wants within a certain period of time. Equivalent experience, or be able to get it within a period of time. I don't even know how long these things take. I'd like to see in the description that the person gets a Virginia driver's license within 30 days, whether they be in-state or out-state, with a 90 days to be a citizen of King George, proven either by voter registration or a bill for their home, need to be a county resident within 90 days. I know this sounds odd, but need to own a vehicle in the county of King George.
No county vehicle.
I don't want somebody driving, no, I didn't say that.
Okay. Just clarifying.
They can, we have a county vehicle, but I don't want that to be their main vehicle. So we've had that issue before. So I want them to own a vehicle in King George County. Is there any other thing you want to add into this as we move forward?
Mr. Chair, so we're going to put this on the January 16th for approval for the,
Well, we need to have, I think we still are, there's still a lot of discussion. I'm seeing eyes that they're not ready to go forward. So we need to discuss it. We need to be very clear about this. This is going to set the stage for you all for the next 4 years. So whenever you all want to bring this up, I don't want to tailor this job description for somebody. I want this job description to be for, we have a lot of talent in this county. Close by in Virginia, need to go after them. So I don't want to exclude people. I guess we'll put it on the 16th, Ms. Fish.
Yeah, I mean, we might want to be looking at, people have experience. I mean, there's, I've talked to Mr. Stroud before about people who have, military experience as far as like retired men who have led bases. They basically led a community. So we know that they've led 100 people before. They haven't run offices of 10 people. They've been in charge of cities, literally. And, reach out to some of those people and that have retired here. I'm sure there are some. And see what their interest is. And I mean, I think what the chair is referring to is we're looking for someone who's invested in King George, and this is going to be home. It's not a stop by. Right. This is somewhere where they're going to come make their money and roll out one day. But this is home. That's the consideration that we're looking for. So,
Mr. Chair, I wanted to add, jumping off the military experience, that for me, as long as they've had some civilian experience, I don't want, again, somebody coming directly out of the military with no experience in the civilian workforce.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item is 111, which is compensation of the clerk of the Board of Supervisors and compensation of the secretary/clerk of the Board of Directors. So Ms. Fish is going to be doing those jobs, and there needs to be adequate compensation to do those. May I ask a question, Ms. Fish? You don't have to answer it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
How many hours a week do you work?
I just logged 113.
113 hours. Thank you. So I guess I'll start the conversation if you don't mind. So she gets her regular pay, and so I think we should compensate her for, so that's 40 hours of her pay. I think we should, I want to like to start with up to 20 hours of compensation at her rate of pay. So she works 20 more hours, she gets basically half of her current paycheck at her current rate. I need to have feedback on this.
Hey, clarification, did you say up to 20?
Up to 20.
So is she currently salaried or an hourly person?
Salary.
Okay, and so when she works 113 hours, she's not getting overtime for anything
No.
above 40? Okay.
She's not getting it. She's been, yes, sir. So she's been doing these responsibilities, and you see what the hours she's putting in. Mr. Messer, I think you have something to add?
Just a clarification. She does get overtime after 40 hours in a week, and that week is from Monday to Sunday, county payroll. So after those 40 hours, she's getting time and a half. So I thought there was some, I think that you asked that question, and I just want to make sure that was answered.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was under the impression that she's basically working 3 work weeks but getting paid for 1.
That was my impression too.
She gets paid time and a half for everything after 40. Okay. So that's already built into that that rule there. Just want to make sure that's clarified so that we are compensating her appropriately based on Fair Labor Standards Act.
So, thank you for that clarification. So, Ms. Fish, you said 100 and something hours in a week?
2 weeks,
In 2 weeks.
to clarify. Every 2 weeks, I probably log around 105 to 110. On January 4th, Mr. Stewart emailed me the section that outlines the powers and duties of county administrator, though I understood he meant the county clerk for board of supervisors and secretary treasurer for board of directors. I replied back to Stewart's email with my preferred terms for compensation. So that could be a conversation with human resources. And last week I also handed Chairman Collins a physical copy of that correspondence. And today I forwarded the email correspondence to all board members. So you should have that.
I have not looked at it, no. Not beginning today.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Washington, I have a legal question. For a county employee, I just want to verify, are all their salaries public information? Yeah. All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'll also bring up, are we going for a salary or an hourly rate? Because I did read the email, and especially being the clerk of 2 boards, I can understand the salary range. So I'm not exactly sure what we're.
I'm also the executive administrative assistant and the Freedom of Information Act officer. We all have backslashes. I have 2 that predominantly are the majority of the time, and then adding these 2 additional roles.
Right, totally understand. I was just trying to clarify what we were looking at. Are we looking at a salary or an hourly rate? So.
Yeah, but so, sir, correct me if I'm wrong, but even with an increase, if hours exceed the 40 hours a week during a work period, she's still going to get time and a half. So I think the discussion requires whether she gets an assistant, because you're either going to have to throttle back the task, or she needs an assistant, or we need to be better at managing the work that's taking place. And I'm not against your salary, or because I know you have a great work ethic, but this goes back to project management again. I mean, you look at your personnel and you look at the task that's being accomplished, and prioritization of the task, and who's accomplishing the task, and the time that you have allotted to it. So I don't think I have enough breakdown on that myself.
So my thing that I wanted to bring in front of you all was that, so she's the executive assistant and the FOIA manager. That's her job. So we have now given her 2 more jobs. So I think that when you give someone more responsibility, you usually give them more money. So what that looks like is up to you all. That's my viewpoint.
So I'm concerned with her current two jobs, she's already working that much overtime. I don't want to burn her out. I mean, she's doing great stuff. I don't want to run that into the ground. And by adding two more jobs to that, compensation or not, there's going to come a point where she's going to cry uncle, or her family's going to cry uncle. Somebody's going to be crying uncle.
That's correct. Ms. Bender?
Yes, Mr. Chair, could, two other options I just thought of is maybe giving her assistant some more responsibilities or looking at how much a third person might also to employ, maybe to take over the FOIA responsibilities, because as my time on the board, that has become quite a challenge and a lot more responsibility due to the amount of FOIA requests.
So I don't think this is going to be solved tonight. But if we've asked her to do more responsibilities, we should give her some type of stipend, at least for a certain term, until we come to an agreement of what her job looks like in the future. Do you all have any feedback into that?
Yeah. Mr. Metzler, is there a task list, or like do the employees have a task list? I'm not talking about their offer letter or something, but a task list, like what the tasks are. I mean, the employees have that. Okay, so because I'd be interested, ma'am, in your task list based on the things that you're performing. And I know lately there are times we all have periods where we surge, and right now you're surging and you're getting the overtime. But what I don't want to have a part of is, as Mr. Sullivan said, is you having a problem with your personal life, and that we created it. But we need to have a task list, the time because the task list has a task, the amount of time it takes to perform that task, how many times that task is being performed in a day, and that figures out, goes into WBS, and it tells us if we have the right number of employees and the right employees performing the task. I mean, some people are more efficient at performing the task and doing those things. Ms. Fish is going to be more efficient probably than an assistant because she's been doing it for a while, but something like that may help us in this as well.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a suggestion, and maybe we can have a time limit on when we have to decide on how we want the position to be structured in the future, is since the two added responsibilities, maybe $5,000 for each of those responsibilities, and set a time limit on when we have to make a decision.
So are you speaking like a stipend?
Yes, like a stipend. So that would come to $10,000 for the clerk of the court, for the service authority, and for the board of supervisors. And we could have a time limit where 3 months we have to make a decision on what we're going to do with all for responsibilities. Are we going to add another position, give more responsibilities maybe to our assistant? What we're doing?
Mr. Sullivan?
So is that stipend in addition to the current salary or instead of the current salary when she's performing those roles?
I would say in addition to, because we've added on 2 new roles.
But she's also making time and a half during the time that she's over 40 hours, right?
I think so. Mr. Metzler would have to clarify that. Well, if we do not have that, could we up the hourly rate, the time and a half rate? Could that also be an option, that we make the time and a half a higher rate?
So in budget season, this will come up, which is January, February, March. This will be a discussion about Ms. Fish's job responsibilities and salary through personnel. But right now, today, she's not, I just don't think it's fair not to have a stipend, at least till we get to budget season. But that's my take.
So what we can do and have done, sorry to interrupt, just something we've done is we've done a temporary increase so that say it's 10% temporary increase for a lot of amount of time until a decision can be made. We do those anywhere between a 5 to 10% is traditionally what we do. But that way, that's easy for our system to go in, put it on the hourly rate. It increases her base pay of 40, and then when she hits overtime, obviously overtime is based off of that base pay. And you can set your time limit on your percent increase.
Would 10% be $10,000?
We could figure out the percentage to equal that. I don't know off the top of my head if that would be $10,000 or not. But
Mr. Strauss?
You're saying $10,000 per what?
No, 5,000 per job.
But
for a time
for
period.
a year or a month or?
No, a year. Like you get 14 or 15,000 for this job,
So
that's for a year.
you're saying that she gets just a $5,000 in a year, where right now she's just a time and a half, based on the math, 20 hours, an additional 20 hours a week, so another $963 a week. So
What would be 10% if we gave her 10%?
So I've had a conversation as chairman with Ms. Fish about the amount of hours she puts in. And I've asked her to cut back because we don't want her to burn out, because she's so valuable to the team. But this is a temporary solution to a permanent problem. We had to talk about this permanent problem in budget season. But in the meantime, I think we need, I hear you what you're saying about time and a half. Is there?
I think that I support that. It just seems menial over the course of the year. So, but we're talking for a temporary solution. We need a better solution. So,
Yes, sir. So at this time, there's no interest in giving her these stipends, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, can we call it, Ms. Hahn, is a bonus allowable? I mean, in our system? Or be able to accommodate it?
Yes, bonuses are allowed. I do know that there's something in our policy manual about bonuses. And so, yes, you could do a bonus. I just want to make sure that when we're doing something that, because it is for two different fund sources, that we
would have to split them into two pots, yes.
Yes.
So it would be, say we went with 10,000, it would be 5,000 from the service authority and 5,000 from the county budget.
Correct.
that would not impact her as positively though, because bonuses are taxed at a considerably higher rate.
It doesn't, bonuses also don't go towards your retirement income. So I was interested in a temporary solution until we got to this issue during the budget. So if there's no will, we won't go forward. But if it's a will, we'll go forward.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I mean, if we're going to set a temporary solution, then there has to be a period of time set on that, wouldn't there be?
Yes, sir.
Like we say for the next month or 2 months or 3 months until we can iron out exactly what it's going to be like.
Till we complete the budget.
That's what I was going to make as a suggestion, is that the timeline is the completion and the final vote on the budget, and the implementation of the budget, that it would be for that time span, because in the budget process, we could decide on what those responsibilities are and whether we're going to add or even add a position. So it could be until the budget is approved.
The only thing I caution about a time limit, it's so if you say $10,000 for 3 months, in the financial system, when you put that $10,000, that's going to split it over an annualized salary instead of,
How about if we put, I'm just throwing this out because you have two different entities. Instead of going with a stipend or a bonus, going with 5,000 from 5,000, 5% from the service authority and 5% from added on to her salary, 5%. I'm just throwing out ideas here.
So on the Board of Supervisors, we get $14,000. So if I complete $15,000. So if I complete half a year, I get half the money. So she'll get the stipend until the budget time when we complete a budget. So her salary, whatever that per month is, she'll get. And then it'll stop. Hopefully it will be much better in the new budget. See what I'm saying? She's only gonna get paid her stipend while she's until we have a final. So she'll be paid up by the month.
right. So if the financial system, say if you entered the 5,000 in, and you only leave it in there for a month and a half, she's not going to get that whole 5,000.
That's correct.
I just want to.
Right. So I'm not gonna, if I quit the Board of Supervisors tomorrow, I'm not gonna get my whole 14,000.
Correct.
Right. Same thing. So there's going to be some, Mr. Messler is on top of the negotiations for the budget season with the personnel as we speak.
Well, Mr. Chair, that's why I was suggesting maybe a percentage onto her salary increase so that she gets that increase for that time span. That's why I was throwing out 5%. It would be 10%, but 5% comes from both entities because it's two different.
It's not percent.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not a personnel manager.
So can I hit some more from the board, please?
I'm fine with the plan of the 5,000 from the two separate entities. I understand it'll be diluted or dispersed over the time frame, but you make up a good point that if this is a temporary thing that goes up to 5,000 per role, then if we come up with a permanent solution, then it's okay. Otherwise, we will pay 5,000 for each and whatever the permanent thing is going forward. So I'm good with it being diluted over time.
Mr. Davis? Mr. Davis?
I wish I'd have gotten this form right here earlier. I know it came to me today, but I had other things I was digging into. But I mean, if that's the solution we come up with that's quick, that's going to be satisfying, then I concur with it as far as 5 each.
Stroud?
Are you good with that, Ms. Fish?
I think it's a starting point.
I concur.
Okay. So let's get a motion on that one. Going to be a motion from the Board of Supervisors and a motion from the Service Authority.
I can make the motion from the Board of Supervisors. So I make a motion to temporarily increase Ms. Fish's salary to $10,000 in total, $5,000 from the Service Authority and $5,000 from the county side of the house due to her new responsibilities that we have given her as clerk of, what are the two job titles? I'll just say the two new responsibilities that will be until the end of the vote on the budget. Ms. Washington, was that okay as a motion?
Separate them, Ms. Washington?
I think you just say 5,000 for the Service Authority, then make a second motion where you say 5,000 for the Board of Supervisors.
How about can I amend my motion to just be 5,000 for the Board of Supervisors?
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Mr. Stroud? Aye. Okay, thank you. Your turn.
So as chair, I need someone to make a motion for the Service Authority side of the house.
I make a motion that the Service Authority match the $5,000 that was just passed for the Board of Supervisors.
Ms. Washington, was that okay? All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you. King George County Service Authority Board of Directors, action items, Ms. Bender, it's on you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Hahn, and Mr. Eisweiss, can you come up for clarification?
So I'll start off with, when I was off on the second and third, when I got back to work on the fourth, I was given a folder of invoices to approve for the Service Authority. Mr. Miller had been the interim general manager. He had the signature authority for the Service Authority, and he had added me to that signature authority to approve in his absence. As I was going through the items in there, there was and this is where Mr. Eisenbeis can tell you a little bit more about it, but there was an emergency procurement, and it did not get Mr. Miller's prior approval for it. So as the finance director, and currently I'm also the interim procurement manager, I didn't feel comfortable signing the emergency paperwork, and so I wanted to bring it tonight. Well, I talked with Ms. Bender, and she asked me to bring it before the board tonight so that you can authorize me to go ahead and approve that and get that invoice paid because the work has been done. And
Mr. Eisman, I also wanted to clarify to the rest of the board, for this is something that we found in Mr. Miller's office, and it was a bill that was not paid, so we need some guidance on how to make sure that we pay the bill and we do it in the proper fashion. And this was done during that Christmas time period. So Mr. Eisenbeis, if you can give a little clarification.
We had a well go out in Canterbury. It was due to staff not operating it correctly. The well was actually only a year old, and we thought at the time it might continue on. We thought it was actually a small cable issue, but as we pulled the well up, it was not a cable issue, and they did have a pump and motor on hand, so we went ahead forward and did it, or they were going to have to put it all back and then come back again. So it would have been under $5,000 if we thought what it was originally, but it was the whole thing, and we had to replace it. That is our main well at Canterbury.
And can you tell how much the cost was?
$9,725.
Which goes above the procurement, right, Ms. Hahn, the immediate attention?
yes, the procurement policy is that if it's below 5,000, you only have to have one quote, and you do not have to have a purchase order. In this instance, it's over 5,000, but under the 15, so you normally would have two quotes and choose the better price on that, or depending on the situation, the fastest delivery. In this instance, Mr. Eisenbeis is stating that they did not have time. They called him out for one issue, and it turned out to be another issue. But, as a procurement manager, I couldn't justify signing that without some authority.
Right, so I would like to hear a discussion from the board on this matter, on the Service Authority Board.
Pay the bill.
I just need a motion, correct, and a second. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with pay the bill, but I would like to know, was training provided to the individual to make sure this doesn't happen again?
This is from our previous water operators before Bowden took over, and Bowden is well aware of the issues, and it was the prior staff that caused the damage.
So I make a motion that the board give Ms. Hahn authority to pay the bill for $9,725.
Second.
Do we have any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question about, was there any kind of warranty on this equipment?
Yes, there is a warranty, but due to the fact that they had left the valving off, it deadheaded the pump, which caused it to burn out.
And this is the result of another firm that was here, that was operating there?
It's our county water people.
Our county water people.
Any further discussion? Yeah, we have a motion properly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Mr. Eismeister, stay up here, Ms. Hahn. Also, the day after our January 2nd meeting, it was brought to my attention, and I spoke to Mr. Eisenbeis. We have some issue with chemical procurement, which put us in a situation where we needed to buy chemicals very quickly. So we have come up with some ideas of maybe how we don't do that again. But Ms. Hahn, could you please give us, because this is a big concern about the chemicals, and I was going to bring this on the January 16th meeting, but there's some explanation that comes with this.
So I have been working with the Bowden staff as well as the county attorney concerning the issues with chemicals that we have back. I'm not even sure at what time the solicitation was posted, but we had a solicitation for chemicals for the Service Authority because prior to that we did not have a contract for chemicals. The former procurement manager, Megan Pitts, had put out a solicitation, and that closed in April of 2023, and then she brought it to the board, and it was an IFB, which if you looked in your procurement manual, that is an invitation for bid, and you award on IFB, you award to the lowest responsible bidder, which in this case, for a couple of items, the solicitation probably could have been more robust in describing those chemicals, and it turns out that the lowest bid on some of those chemicals is causing issues now for the treatment of our wastewater facilities. And so I had worked with previous county attorney, and I'm working with the current county attorney to put out an emergency IFB for those two chemicals and terminate the contract that we have with the current contractor. And an emergency procurement we have to put out for a minimum of 11 days. That gives 1 day for question, and by procurement law, we have to put out a solicitation. Once you put an addendum with any question and answers, you have to allow 10 days before you can close that solicitation. So the minimum we can put out is 11 days. And so that's the direction that we're moving in for that. But in this instance, I was contacted. I was actually in Roanoke over the holiday and was driving back from Roanoke, and with the only person with the signature authority for the Service Authority at that time, I was prepared to pull over on the side of the road and approve something in DocuSign if needed. It turned out I did get home before we had gotten the quote, and I was able to complete that emergency procurement for those chemicals. But we need to get a contract in place to replace what we have currently.
And I was going to bring it on the January 16th meeting, so with the verbiage, so that we can then get the process in motion, because Mr. Eisenbeis, after we finish the discussion, it needs to bring up another matter that we will probably have to make another chemical purchase before January 16th.
So we need someone else besides Ms. Hahn to have signature ability.
Right, that's coming up next. I was just trying to take care of this point first. So is there any other questions of Mr. Eisenbeis or Ms. Hahn? Because Mr. Eisenbeis has to talk about the chemicals that probably will need to be purchased before January 16th, so we do not run out of chemicals.
The problem was the chemicals were bad.
So the solicitation called for alum, and there are a couple of different chemical makeups for alum. There is one with a poly, and I'm trying to.
Actually, there's several differences in the chemicals. The alum is different, the soda ash is different. We're getting a dense soda ash now, which is clogging up the lines. It has a freeze point of 40 degrees. We've probably spent, in the last 3 weeks, probably 100 man hours cleaning out lines, replacing lines. We have lines currently clogged right now. It's totally different chemicals that we were using before. I don't think there was something lost in that bid from the manufacturer, what we actually needed. We changed company or.
Right. So my question is, I guess, is where I'm kind of going is, How much more of that do we have left? And are we returning it and getting money back for it?
We do not have any, I think,
No.
from the other company, and that's why we did an emergency procurement last week.
That was part of the other part of the issue. We were unable to get a delivery schedule from the new company, and also they don't have any way of transporting the chemicals. They used to be delivered on a truck with a pump. Currently, we're getting totes dropped off, which causes the employee, we have to go over, cut a hole in the tote, and they have to pump it themselves into the.
Okay, because there was there's two issues. One, do we just run out, like there's a failure to plan, or is the problem the chemicals are bad and they need to be replaced? So it sounds like the chemicals are bad and they created a problem, but you also ran out.
They're running out because they couldn't perform, they couldn't deliver. They weren't meeting their delivery schedule.
Okay, so that goes back to project management again. You know, we foresee these things and we foresee if they're not delivering on schedule, like, is it the first time they didn't deliver? Or
They've been putting in the orders and they've just been putting us on. They say, well, it'll be there Monday, then it's Friday, then it's next week, and they're just not performing. I don't know whether they don't have the chemicals to deliver or they just can't get them to us.
And Mr. Stroud, that's why on January, the next meeting, we need to bring up to go out an RFP to get a new supplier and to eliminate that contract.
You know, we need to identify the property and inventory shortfalls because we should probably have a stash of so many months of chemicals or whatever it is we need on hand. So when we run into supply chain issues, we don't have that problem.
An emergency action plan.
Yeah.
I would also say that we need a secondary option in place. That we're depending on one person to deliver stuff, and we don't have we haven't already reached out to another company as a backup plan in order to say that these people haven't delivered in the past, or if they can't deliver, we should have someone in the back, another company that we have a relationship with who we can order things from, in a secondary option.
We actually did the emergency order with our original contractor that always supplied the chemicals. And their chemicals do provide better treatment also, and we don't have the clogging of lines and that thing.
I was also going to bring that up too, that we have a secondary supplier. So if there is supply chain issues, but go ahead.
So the original supplier that we got the emergency supplies from it sounds like there was a new contract rebid. This lowest bidder, as we discussed, kind of won. They didn't deliver, and we had to go back to the original.
Well, it's twofold. We never had a contract with the previous vendor. It was just a purchase without a contract, which is in violation of the Virginia Public Procurement Act. And that's why the previous procurement manager put out a solicitation for the chemicals. And so, like I said, there wasn't any specification other than the word alum and the word soda ash in the list of chemicals that were needed. And I think from the one company we can get soda ash light versus the soda ash dense that we're getting from the one that was awarded.
Mm-hmm.
So my take on this is fix the problem. Period. And have another signature authority. And I think it's on the agenda that this vendor is willing to take on the signature authority since we don't have a general manager.
Yes, and also Ms. Cobb in finance, so Ms. Hahn is not available. So we do have some motions on that, if anyone would like to make a motion for either of those items, because when we got in here on January 3rd, the day after, we had a bit of a crisis that we had to take care of, and we need to have a backup signature authority.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant signature authority to Mrs. Bender and Mrs. Cobb for the King George County Service Authority.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, just a quick discussion. With the signature authority granted, is the authority that they have to purchase what you have laid out in this procurement manual?
So yes, it follows the procurement manual, and the instance on that day was that I wasn't I was off that day, and to sign that purchase requisition, I needed to sign it in the slot where the general manager would approve, but also I am also the interim procurement manager, so I had to sign it as far as procurement that we were following the processes in that manual.
Understood. I just ask as a citizen of the Water Authority, I've been the recipient of the burden of maybe some bad purchases that have been made, and want to ensure that there's, transparency in the purchases that are made, not just, full authority is granted to somebody to buy and do whatever they.
No, and with it being in finance, and that's why the previous issue was brought before you tonight, because as the procurement manager, I didn't feel justified to sign it without somebody else's authority.
I appreciate that. That was good. I like that.
I think what you're talking about is just a process of, with trust but verify.
Yeah.
Like there has to be, it's more than one person. Like was it the previous county administrator who was ordering these chemicals? Is that correct?
Well, no, he was the interim general manager, and he would sign off on it. But the contract was prepared with the assistance of staff at the Service Authority as well as in Bowdoin employees to put out the solicitation for the chemicals. And then once that she brought it to the board of directors before finalizing any contracts with that. So the board of directors has the final approval on that contract before it goes out and we start buying from it. And then Miss Parker Norris sent over purchase requisitions for the chemicals that they needed for a blanket purchase order that was approved by Mr. Miller as the interim general manager. So it's
I got you.
Yeah, it's not just one person signing off on those things.
Mr. Collins?
My last comment is fix the problem, and I request to call the question.
Okay, we have a motion properly seconded. Discussion closed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Last thing before we finish up ours, I just want to make sure Mr. Eisenreich has made me aware today that we possibly have to purchase more chemicals. Do we need a motion for that to do an emergency purchase from that same company?
So I've asked that they provide me with several weeks to calculate how much they're going to need for several weeks until we can get an emergency procurement, an emergency solicitation out so that we can do an emergency purchase order for that.
Will we have enough chemicals for that time period? That's where I'm concerned about.
That's what I'm asking, that they provide me with information for an estimated amount that they're going to need. And like I said, it's going to take 11 days. And if you wait to take action on advertising an RFP until the 16th, you're going to need to go at least 3 to 4 weeks after that. So we probably need to do an emergency procurement for at least 5 weeks of chemicals, I would say.
Okay, and we can bring that to the next board meeting and there will be no.
So I'm not sure.
That's where I'm concerned. I want to make sure we have the chemicals.
Just fix the problem. Just fix the problem. Well, and then we'll get the proper RFPs set out for the.
Yes, with the signature authority, I can go ahead and
fix it now. That's not something
procure those.
Wait on.
He's going to send me the information tomorrow, and I can go ahead and we can issue an emergency purchase order.
Okay, thank you. You had a.
I was just going to say, yeah, I agree with Mr. Collins. Fix the problem now. I don't know if there's a way to authorize, up to a certain purchase amount that if they need to go order something, hey, in the next 3 days, if we don't have a board meeting until next Tuesday or something, they have the authority to go buy 2 weeks worth of,
That's all I wanted. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was transparent about it and everybody knows that that might occur. So when it comes before the board to pay, you know why it's there. So I think that's all we had, right, Ms. Hahn?
For the board of directors.
Correct.
King George, Board of Supervisors, action item, Department of Finance and Procurement, recommend to grant signature authority to a staff member in lieu of the county administrator. So do you have a staff member?
So I'll explain a little bit for everybody's, Either myself or Ms. Fish signature to be added to that.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that, so, Ms. Hahn, you're already on.
No, I'm not. Right now, the signature, I approve everything, but the signature on the check is currently Christopher Miller and Randy Jones, the treasurer. And so we need, before we can pay any of the bills, we need to have a new signature on that so that it prints on the checks.
So, Mr. Stroud, I think where I hear you going is you need two signatures, Ms. Fish and somebody else. I don't want signature authority. I'm telling you that now.
I understand, Ms. Fish isn't on there now, though, is she?
No.
Right, so the
That's
motion,
one. We need two.
No, we only need one.
you only need one, it's either or.
Yeah, but we need two. He's a constitutional officer.
He is the treasurer, and so his name has to be on
Right.
those checks.
But if Ms. Fish is off, sick or otherwise, and the office is closed, we need more than just two people.
She doesn't physically sign the checks. A signature is completed and put into the system.
Right, we need an authority for another signer, in my opinion. Yes, sir.
So you're not asking for a second person to countersign, you're asking to have a primary and a backup in case you're off, she's available, or likewise, in case you're off, you're available, somebody can cover down on this.
He might be referring to the warrants that currently Ms. Fish is signing off on the warrants after the checks have been cut. This is on the checks themselves.
I was talking about the checks themselves. So I understand that Mr. Jones signs, and then the county administrator would sign. And now we have Ms. Fish and Mr. Jones, but if Ms. Fish is not available to authorize it, someone else needs to be able to authorize it.
So I actually approve those documents that the finance specialists prepare with all those checks on it. So I sign off on that form prior to, and then they print the checks. It never goes over to the county administrator or the treasurer before those checks are cut. The treasurer gets a list of all the checks that are cut once they're cut.
Mr. Chairman, the finance office has a program and they have a vendor that has tied into our Bright system. And so they set up the proofs, like Ms. Fish will sign her signature on a proof sheet, and they will put it into the system, test it, and then every time the checks are run, her signature will automatically be on there, like with the Mr. Jones as well.
I understand what you're saying. So just given the last happened, I was there when the water authority thing fell apart. They knock on the door and they say, we need more chemicals. And we say, go get chemicals. They say, well, we don't have anybody to sign the check. Ms. Hahn is on vacation. Mr. Miller is no longer here. We don't want to ever get in that position again.
And in that instance, if I'm not here during the time that the finance specialists prepare those documents for my approval, Ms. Cobb has authority to sign that in my place.
I make a motion that Ms. Fish be added as a signature authority on the checks.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Whoa, I got discussion.
A nay? There's still discussion?
Still discussion.
Go ahead, sir.
Slow down. Should we bound this in time, or basically say that it expires when we have a county administrator on board?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So you want to make an amendment?
Do you want to make a friendly amendment?
I'd like to make an amendment to my motion.
Well, go ahead,
I'd like
Mr.
to make
Stroud.
an amendment to my motion or correcting action, perfecting action that adds that Ms. Fish is a signature authority on the checks until a new county administrator is hired.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you. Is there a motion for adjournment?
Let me,
Motion to adjourn.
we're gonna have to do both adjournments, so we need an adjournment for the Board of Directors and the Board of Supervisors. So why don't we go for the Board of Directors first? Can I have a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion that we adjourn the Board of Directors meeting for tonight.
Give it time. So you gotta basically go adjourn to the date, the next meeting, and a time and the location.
Go for it.
I make a motion that we adjourn the Board of Directors meeting on Monday, January 8th at 6:56 PM and adjourn until January 16th, 2024 at 5:30 5:30 PM in the Robert H. Combs boardroom.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Properly second.
Well, that's mine. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Second. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. The Service Authority's meeting is concluded.
I have one thing that we need to take care of before we adjourn the Board of Supervisors. So we have the Budget Committee. Generally, we've had it for the past many years. Are we still going to have a Budget Committee? Citizen Budget Advisory Committee? Yes? I'd like to appoint John Windsor Jr. To the Budget Advisory Committee.
Second.
Probably second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
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 Mr. Chair, can we all give our nominations if we have
Yes, if you
someone?
have them.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Brian Gregan for the Shiloh District.
Second.
Probably second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
I'd like to make a motion to add Brett Moffitt of the Dahlgren District to the Budget Advisory Committee.
Second.
Probably second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Any more?
Make a motion that we appoint Mr. Anthony Stats as the acting representative.
Second.
Probably second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Aye.
Okay. If there's no more other appointments or business?
I have another.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I'd also like to make a motion to add Brett Moffitt to the Planning Commission to represent the Dahlgren District.
Can I ask for, I'll wait for the second and have a discussion on that.
Second.
Probably second. Discussion, Ms. Bender?
So one of the things I wanted to suggest we bring up, and we've talked about this in the past, and I've talked to a lot of other committees in the state, is 10 planning commission members is a little too much. So I would like to have a discussion about bringing it to 5 and how we do that before we appoint any other members. Because thinking about it, do you let their term run off, or like how do we do it properly? So maybe at the next board we have a discussion of how, if we are going to 5, how we do that. And I don't remember off the top of my head if Dahlgren is missing a seat at this
We're
moment.
missing one. We have a person step down.
Okay, because I just didn't want to appoint new people until we decide what we're going to do. Are we going to wipe the clean slate and then appoint people, or are we going to just let people roll off until we get to 5? We need to have a discussion on how we're going to do that if we want to go to 5 members to the Planning Commission.
I'd like to see if there's some way we could set up a meeting with the chair of the Planning Commission and speak to them a little about what they're going through and other members and things like that, and get their opinion on some of that too. Yeah, I want to have their feedback.
That's cool. I mean, 10 for many places.
Too much as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you on that. But I'm also by getting some fresh perspective and some fresh eyes on some things that, and some people that maybe are qualified to do those things. So
I don't disagree. Before we nominated someone, I wanted to know if we wanted to make that decision.
then I could pass that right now until we make that, we talk about it further.
So if you have the motion, you have to take it off.
Yes, I removed that motion
Sully had it.
of that and that.
Mr. Sullins,
One thing we might try that would do a quick reduction is work with the chair of that committee and just ask, is there anybody who would like to terminate their term early? Some people may just be tired and more than happy to quit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got one more thing, Mr. Chair, if that's all right.
Yes, sir.
Just something that I like to bring up, and I'm not sure of all the formalities behind this, of something to bring up for further discussion that could be added to down the line. But as far as like the zoning in our community, I ran on transparency, and I would like to set up not a, you know, we put the public hearing signs up when we're getting ready to rezone property and things like that, but I'd like to have more of a community meeting when any property is going to be rezoned, to reach out to those people it's going to affect personally. It's around their property. We're going to rezone that property. I like to have a community meeting with those people, not with a bunch of people sitting behind a desk, but actually showing the pros and cons of what we're doing. I think it's going to cut down a lot on the things that we go against and 20 million people in the boardroom, but actually reaching out to them and also other concerned citizens come to this, have a community meeting with them before we rezone any property. And we don't have to do anything but just something like to discuss.
I like that idea. Just how do we do that properly?
So when there's rezoning, there is a requirement by law, we have to notify the neighbors that are directly affected. But, you know, it's kind of like the situation down there with the range. That lady went to every one of the neighbors, even the unaffected neighbors, and talked to them. So we should be a part of those conversations, I agree. And so we'll work forward to do that if everybody agrees. To have like town halls or community meetings or whatever, we'll announce them, you know, we'll do it proper.
And basically, it's like a community meeting before we rezone anything. There's a lot, and I know that we put up the signs and it's in the paper and all those things, but I don't read the paper, you know, most of the time. But I don't want things to think that people think that we're sliding stuff in at the end of the day in the midnight hour when no one's paying attention to rezoning property around. I want to make sure that we're out there engaging them, talking about the pros and the cons of this, and letting them give us feedback. I just think it'd be beneficial.
The state sets the requirements for the zoning, and the intent though is to go above and beyond that and make it provide opportunities to the public.
I agree, sir.
You made the point that the lady with the range, she went and met with all the neighbors. Was that a requirement, or did she do that of her own free will?
So it was only a requirement for certain neighbors, the abutting landowners. But she went across the street or down the subdivision and so forth. So I agree with the rest of the board in regards to stepping it up.
Yeah, I like the suggestion too.
Okay, is there any other business before the board? Is there any motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Hold on.
I better read something.
Do you want to take it or you want me to do it? I make a motion to adjourn the King George Board of Supervisors to Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. in the Robert H. Combs Boardroom.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? I'd just like to say that this will conclude at 7:03. So the promise of the board is already started. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. We're now adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.